My name is Jenny, and I am a 27-year-old office worker. I just got married 6 months ago. I met my husband, Victor, at a barbecue party thrown by a couple of colleagues from work. It seems that the event was set up as a place to meet, now that I think about it. A colleague invited some female friends from the office, and her boyfriend gathered friends from his student days. My father is the president of a company, and I was raised strictly since I was a child, with a curfew even through high school. I had never been to a mixer, and places with many people or many men made me nervous. That day, I was mostly talking to female friends from work when Victor first spoke to me. "Jenny, the meat is ready over here. You haven't eaten much, have you? Don't hold back, here you go." With a smile, he created a very easygoing atmosphere, and we quickly hit it off, and our conversation flowed smoothly. Thanks to him being good at livening things up, I naturally joined everyone's circle, and the day passed quickly because I had so much fun. On the way home that day, he asked for my contact details, and the next day, I received a message saying, "Yesterday was fun. I want to meet just the two of us next time." I mustered up the courage to reply, "Me too." And soon my phone rang, and he said, "Really? I'm so happy. When shall we meet? Where do you want to go?" My heart raced during such exchanges. Even when he asked me out at the end of our first date, I was so happy I immediately said yes. After several dates, he was driving me home one day, and when we arrived at the gate of my house, he seemed a bit surprised. I heard at the barbecue that Jenny was a young lady, but, wow, such a mansion. "Is your father the president or something?" "Yes, kind of." "Do you know the Hansen Group?" "Hansen. Who doesn't know it?" "Wow, so Jenny is the daughter of a big corporate president. I'm not really a lady. Really, should someone like me even be dating you? If you have a fiancé or something, please tell me sooner." He said this seriously. "What are you talking about?" "There's no such person, and I want to marry someone I love. I have 2 brothers, so I won't be taking over anything." "Really? Really?" Such conversations were only for that moment, and even after knowing about my family background, our relationship continued smoothly. And about a year later, he proposed, and I introduced him to my parents, and we got married. Even after we got married, he was kind. About a month ago, when my mother called to say that my father was not feeling well and was going into the hospital for tests, Victor stayed close to me, who was surprised and upset, and drove me there because he was worried. At that time, the test results had not yet come out, and my father said with a smile, "Sorry to worry you, I've just been busy and tired recently." However, that weekend, we were asked to gather at my parents' house. My brother's family, Victor and me, and my still single younger brother. This was the first time we had all been together since our wedding. A bad premonition crossed my mind, and sadly, it was correct. My father had cancer metastasis, and it was already at a stage where surgery was not possible. Really, I was surprised. They told me the test results would come in a week, but actually, they called me the next day. I received a life expectancy announcement. He spoke bravely, and my mother stood beside him, holding back tears. No way. I couldn't stop my tears, and Victor gently put his hand on my shoulder. My brothers also had faces of disbelief and could not immediately find words to speak. Even so, I'm not dying tomorrow. There's a lot I still need to do, not just for the house, but as the head of the company. I'll need a lot of help from you guys. It seemed he was mainly speaking to my elder brother and Victor. My father then addressed my husband, who was comforting me. "I'm sorry that this has happened when you're newlyweds. Please take good care of Jenny for me." "Of course, Father. If there's anything I can do, just tell me." Moved by their words, I shed tears again. Due to my father's strong wishes, he decided to receive palliative care at home instead of being hospitalized. Fortunately, the medication worked well, and his willpower was strong. At first, he spent little time in bed, and my mother would say, "It's hard to believe he's seriously ill, he's moving around so much." He discussed the situation with secretaries, executives, and lawyers and continued to handle what needed to be done. My mother was of course devoted, and my brothers supported my father both personally and professionally. The heir, my elder brother, had built a house near our parents' home after getting married, and my still single younger brother was already living at home. I would visit my parents' house as much as possible after work, always rushing there on weekends. Victor joined me on the weekends, and on weekdays when I stopped by, he would tell me not to worry about cooking dinner. I was grateful for his support. One day, when I returned home after visiting my parents, he had already come back, and I could hear voices from the living room. Was it a phone call? I quietly entered the living room. I'm saying, probably soon. He won't last much longer. I thought I heard that and my heart pounded. What was that? What did it mean? Wow. Startled by my entrance, Victor exclaimed loudly and hastily ended the call. Oh, you're back? Yeah. Hey, who were you talking to just now? What were you talking about? It wasn't about my father, huh? What are you talking about? Of course not. I was talking about a game with a friend. Remember him, the gamer? But I heard something about not lasting long. He's in a gaming tournament. Apparently, he's struggling, and he was saying his opponent is about to run out of items and is in trouble. I see, sorry, I thought you were talking about my father and really got scared. Jenny. He gently grabbed my shoulder. It saddens me to be misunderstood like that. I'm worried about your father too and still wonder if there's a way to cure him. He said earnestly. Right, sorry, you are always so kind. I just came from seeing my dad, and I guess I was feeling down. I haven't been eating much lately. I see. I'm sorry you're going through this, and there's nothing I can do. But it's not good to always look so gloomy. Maybe you should go out for coffee with friends sometimes. You're right. Relieved by his behavior, I felt guilty for doubting such a kind person. And a month later, despite our family's hopes, my father passed away. My mother, brothers, and I made it in time for the last goodbye, which was a consolation. With so much to do one after another, there was little time to mourn. From the wake to the funeral, and at the company, my brother's appointment as president and the new structure that came with it, there was a lot to do. There was also talk with trusted senior executives, and no one opposed my still young brother's appointment as president. There are many people who will support us. My mother also felt relieved. My brother's character, and originally my father's serious care for the company and its employees, had its rewards. The next weekend, settled for the moment, the family gathered under the guidance of our consulting lawyer. The main topic was inheritance. It was announced that the 3 children would share the inheritance equally. The amount was approximately $3 million. I noticed Victor gasp next to me. I was surprised by the staggering amount, grateful, but I wished more than anything that my father could have lived longer. There was also talk about the company's rights and land, and it was decided to continue this discussion next time. Exhausted by the difficult conversations, when I got home, I told my husband, I'm going to rest a bit. And headed to the bedroom. Yes, rest well. About the inheritance discussion earlier, since no one opposed, does that mean it's decided? I think so, but why do you ask? Well, I was just surprised because the amount was larger than expected. It feels overwhelming. Yes, I was surprised too. Saying that, I entered the bedroom and lay down, feeling uneasy about his words. Larger than expected? I was vaguely thinking about it when I seemed to have dozed off a bit. I woke up and quietly headed to the living room. It's true, seriously. It's $3 million. No mistake. Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's fine. How much I've struggled and... Oh. Well, she's waking up, so I'll hang up now. Bye. Who? I asked him, trying to contain my turmoil, as he had been on the phone. It was my mother. She was worried about how you are, asking if you've started to feel a bit better. I see. Well, and, she wants to come over this weekend. Apparently, there's a new cake shop that opened, and she wants you to try their cakes. Sure, that's fine. Maybe I'll buy some nice coffee then. I smiled as I spoke, and he nodded happily. A definite suspicion had formed in my mind. The day before my mother-in-law was to visit, I stopped by my parents' house. Mom, how are you? Have you calmed down a bit? Yes, you don't have to visit so much. Amy also always comes by to check on me. Are you eating properly? Amy is my brother's wife, who is reserved but firm and caring. She was devoted to nursing my father and supported my mother during the funeral. I think my brother really married a wonderful person. Yes, don't worry about me, but actually, I have something I'd like to discuss. What's the matter? There's something that's been bothering me. As I drank the coffee my mother had made, I began to share my suspicions about Victor. The next Saturday, my mother-in-law arrived. She had attended my father's wake and funeral, and this was the first time we'd seen each other since then. Jenny, it's really unfortunate about your father. I brought some delicious cake to cheer you up even a bit. Thank you for your kindness during that time. Please come in. Let me make you some coffee. Oh, thank you. As the three of us were eating cake, Victor broached the subject. So, about the inheritance. Yes? Could you transfer the $3 million to my mother's account? What? It was a conversation that went far beyond what I could have anticipated. I was momentarily stunned. I don't understand what you mean. $3 million is a lot of money, isn't it? It's unsettling to have it, right? You're part of our family now, so I think it's best to transfer it to my parents' account. What? I couldn't understand at all. Are you asking to borrow some money? Like for a car or something expensive that's needed? Borrow? What are you talking about? It's our money now, my family's. Victor suddenly burst into laughter. My family's? Of course, the family Victor was born into and grew up in. Jenny, you've married into our family, so your money is our money, isn't it? The mother-in-law continued with a smile. I'll manage it properly for you. You can ask if you need something, but you have your salary, so you'll be fine, right? Wait a minute, I don't understand what you mean. Even if you say it's our money as a couple, why does it become your money? Because that's just how it is, it's our money now. Naturally, that includes my mother too. What? What are you talking about? Oh, don't worry, your family too, of course. First, we can build a big duplex house and buy a car, huh? We've got $3 million, so it's easy. Oh, Victor, you're getting ahead of yourself. But yes, I do want to get started on the duplex soon. Well, that's the situation, so transfer it to my mother's account now, will you? Please, Jenny. A daughter-in-law's money is our money. I was stunned by the true nature of these two. Far from a sliver of hope, it was worse than I could have imagined. Victor, did you marry me for my family's wealth? Huh? I really do love you. But it's Jenny with the wealth. When I heard you were a lady and started dating, it turned out to be a much bigger company than I thought, so I decided right away to marry you. That's right. I welcomed it too, and Victor has always cherished you, hasn't he? Was it all just to get my family's wealth? Oh, don't make such a scary face. When you marry, you become part of the husband's family, so it's natural to transfer the wealth, right? Well, it was lucky he got sick right after you got married. I was really surprised. I planned to cash in big time in the future, but I never expected him to go to heaven so soon. How terrible. Are you saying you were hoping my father would die? My body wouldn't stop trembling. He got cancer on his own, didn't he? If there's no saving him, it can't be helped. I just prayed he'd find peace soon. Yes, it's better for him to pass away quickly and leave the inheritance to his children than to suffer for a long time. Victor certainly had always treated me well. That's why I could believe it was a misunderstanding when I heard unbelievable words over the phone. I was deceived by a brilliant performance. Thinking back, a seed of doubt had sprouted in me at that time. But I thought it was natural for someone to get a bit carried away or expect some luxury when marrying into a wealthy family. However, this was not just any talk. Unforgivable, these scoundrels. Holding back my rising anger, I said. First of all, the money hasn't even entered my account yet. I can't transfer it. I've been told the procedure will take about another week. What? I thought it had already been deposited. Hurry it up. Well, but it seems you understand, Jenny. You're smart. Once the money is in, hand it over to me and leave the rest to me. Right, I'll give you my mother's account later. Transfer it as soon as you can. Saying this, my husband tried to hug my shoulder. I didn't even want to call him my husband anymore. I slipped out of his grasp and somehow kept my composure. Please come back next week. When I said that, my mother-in-law replied with a smile. All right. And left. And then the day came. I was going to make these vile people, who rejoiced at my father's death and aimed to seize his inheritance, realize their mistake. As soon as they barged into the house and took their seats, my mother-in-law spoke up. Jenny, has the $3 million been deposited? Have you transferred it to my account yet? Let's celebrate with steaks or barbecue tonight. Oh, that sounds wonderful. With $3 million coming in, I'll treat you tonight, Victor. Both were in high spirits. Of course, they thought they were about to get $3 million. Little did they know everything was about to turn upside down. Now, I have something to tell you. I smiled calmly. The process for renouncing the inheritance has been completed. What? True to form, the parent and child chimed in perfectly together. Their eyes widened in shock, were identical. What did you say just now? You said you renounced the inheritance. Yes, I renounced the inheritance. Stop joking. You wouldn't do such a foolish thing. Exactly. Who in the world would willingly give up $3 million? Well, normally, no. People often renounce inheritances when the debts outweigh the assets. Right, it's unthinkable not to accept an inheritance when there are no debts. The mother-in-law shrieked, her face twisted like a demon's. How scary. Oh, didn't you know? It's not so rare for heirs of family businesses to renounce inheritances to pass specific rights to a particular heir, to ensure stable long-term management. What? What did you do? She seemed at a loss for words. Well, of course, these greedy two wouldn't imagine passing money to someone else. In our case, my brother has taken over my father's position so suddenly. I plan to support him as his sister. But that doesn't mean you should give away the inheritance. You're being fooled, Jenny, used by your brother and his wife. Yes, exactly. Even the sister-in-law, she's after the wealth too. In their fluster, I snapped back coldly. Don't lump her together with you two. This was my decision. Both my brother and his wife said, "You don't need to renounce the inheritance, and she's a wonderful woman." If they told you that you don't need to renounce it, see, reconsider. I already told you, the procedure is completed. I will not receive the $3 million. No. No way. I have no intention of giving a single penny to a husband who rejoices in his own father-in-law's misfortune. Next to my pale-faced husband, the mother-in-law, also turning blue, suddenly looked up. Unbelievable. If the inheritance isn't coming, Victor, we need a divorce. We'll demand property division. What? I couldn't help but blurt out in astonishment. Of course, Victor did nothing wrong, and you renounced the inheritance on your own. Anyway, where's the proof that we rejoiced in your father's misfortune or that we were after the inheritance? We performed well at both the wake and the funeral. Such a quick talker. She even admitted to acting. If you need proof, didn't you just provide it in your words? Because no one else knows but you. Stop this foolish renunciation and apologize. Then I won't have you divorce. At that moment, a loud voice echoed in the living room. The one who should apologize is you. The calm male voice sounded, and the mother-in-law froze as she turned around. You. Why are you here? Dad. Victor was also stunned. There stood my father-in-law. I caught my mother's eye behind my father-in-law, and we nodded at each other. You've always been one to put on airs. You were so happy when Victor was going to marry Jenny, but I never imagined you were this kind of person. I couldn't believe that until I heard it with my own ears. Victor, you too. The father-in-law looked genuinely distressed. What? The mother-in-law and husband's eyes flicked back and forth in shock. It was last week that you came to Jenny with that foolish talk about handing over the inheritance. I heard everything you said at that time. What? You did? Everything has been recorded. Today too, of course. What? What do you mean? Victor shouted at me. You panicked a few times when I overheard your phone calls. You thought you'd managed to fool me, but I won't be deceived that easily. So, I set my smartphone to record when I heard your mother was coming. Indeed, the day before my mother-in-law was to arrive, I stopped by my parents' house and consulted with my mother and the lawyer. My mother was shocked, saying, "That can't be possible." But the reality turned out to be much worse, and I decided to renounce the inheritance immediately starting Monday. I also reached out to my father-in-law, who had not been around that day. My father-in-law, who used to enjoy playing chess and golf with my father, was shocked by his wife and son's outrageous behavior and kept apologizing profusely. I can no longer be with someone like you. You? No, this isn't what it looks like. Mr. Hansen was humble and had a wonderful human character despite being the president of a large company. I was happy to be his family and friend, but this is just. There's no excuse for their behavior. I'm deeply ashamed. He repeatedly apologized to me. Jenny, I am truly sorry. You can divorce immediately if you wish. Of course, I won't let anyone talk about property division or anything foolish like that. Hey, Dad. Quiet. Don't open your mouth anymore, you shameless person. If you have complaints, let's show today's and the other day's recordings to your colleagues and all our relatives. No way. My father-in-law took the last cool moment. But that's okay. When I spoke with my mother, my father-in-law apologized and cried, truly thinking of my father. With Victor and the mother-in-law speechless, their mouths agape, I said, "That's the situation. Please leave." 1 month later, Victor and I divorced. The rumors spread among the couple who had introduced us, and it seems Victor lost all his friends. He was reportedly reassigned to a small sales office far away. Victor's parents also divorced. The mother-in-law, who had freely spent the father-in-law's money on luxury goods and dining out, was told to agree to a divorce if she couldn't pay back the money she had used. As a housewife and a spendthrift, she had no other options. I thought, can't she say I'll get a part-time job and pay it back, so please don't divorce me? Her inability to reconsider and try again with the father-in-law shows her true character. Well, it's none of my concern anymore. The inheritance I relinquished is being used as capital for the company. My mother, brother, and even my younger brother laughed when they said they would pass on part of their inheritance to me or suggested redistributing it again. Having such a family is more than enough for me. Dad, I wasn't wrong, was I? Having moved out of the apartment I shared with Victor and returned to my parents' home, I spoke to my father's portrait. It seemed like my father in the portrait smiled, and tears rolled down my cheeks.
I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my hands trembling as I gripped the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines, positive. My heart raced as I tried to process this life-changing news. How would I tell Chris? As if on cue, I heard the front door open. "Nora? You home?" Chris called out. I quickly shoved the test into my pocket and splashed some water on my face. "In here," I managed to reply, my voice shakier than I'd intended. Chris appeared in the doorway, his face etched with worry. "Everything okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. "Just feeling a bit under the weather. How was your interview?" He ran a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of stress. "It was interesting. Can we talk?" We moved to the living room, settling onto our worn couch. Chris took a deep breath. "They offered me the job." "That's great news," I exclaimed, genuinely happy for him after a year of fruitless job hunting. His expression remained serious. "There's a catch, Nora. The position is in Seattle." My stomach dropped. "Seattle? But that's across the country. Our whole life is here, my art studio, our friends, your family." I know," Chris said, reaching for my hand, "but this is a fantastic opportunity. The salary is double what I was making before, and there's room for growth." I pulled away, standing up to pace the room. "What about my career? I've just started to build a name for myself in the local art scene." Chris's eyes pleaded with me. "You can paint anywhere, Nora, and with this salary, we could afford a house with a dedicated studio space for you." I felt torn. The pregnancy test weighed heavily in my pocket, a secret that would change everything. "I don't know, Chris. It's such a big decision." "We don't have to decide right this second," he said, his voice gentle, "but they need an answer by the end of the week." Just then, a cry erupted from the baby monitor. Our daughter, Lily, was awake from her nap. "I'll get her," Chris offered, standing up. As he left the room, I sank back onto the couch, my mind reeling. How could I uproot our entire life? But how could I ask Chris to turn down this opportunity after struggling for so long? When Chris returned with Lily, her chubby arms reached out for me. I took her, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "Mama sad?" Lily asked, her big blue eyes studying my face. I kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart, Mama's just thinking." Chris sat beside us, his arm around my shoulders. "We're a team, Nora. Whatever we decide, we'll do it together." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. How could I tell him about the baby now? It would only complicate things further. "I have an idea," Chris said suddenly. "Why don't we take a drive to that little bed and breakfast we love? We can spend the weekend there, talk things through without any distractions." The thought of escaping, even for a couple of days, was tempting. What about Lily? My mom's been begging for some grandma time. I'm sure she'd be thrilled to watch her. I hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." As Chris made the arrangements, I excused myself to the bathroom. I pulled out the pregnancy test, staring at those 2 pink lines that had the power to change everything. How could I tell Chris now, with this job offer hanging over us? And how could I not? My mind raced with the possibilities, each scenario more daunting than the last. One thing was certain, this weekend getaway would be anything but relaxing. The moving truck rumbled away, leaving us standing in front of our new home in Seattle. Rain drizzled down, matching my mood perfectly. Chris squeezed my hand, his excitement palpable. "This is it, Nora, our fresh start." I forced a smile, my free hand resting on my now visible baby bump. "It's different." As we walked up the driveway, a voice called out, "Welcome to the neighborhood." A statuesque blonde in yoga pants jogged towards us, all smiles and bouncing ponytail. "I'm Angela, your next-door neighbor." Chris stepped forward, extending his hand. "Chris, this is my wife Nora, and our daughter Lily." Angela's eyes lingered on Chris a beat too long before turning to me. "Oh, and another one on the way. How exciting!" I nodded, suddenly feeling frumpy in my travel-worn clothes. "We're due in 4 months." "Well, if you need anything at all, I'm right next door," Angela said, her hand on Chris's arm. "Anything at all." As she jogged away, Chris chuckled. "Friendly neighbors. That's a good sign, right?" I mumbled agreement, but something about Angela's overly warm welcome left me uneasy. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of unpacking and settling in. Chris threw himself into his new job, often working late. I struggled to find my footing, missing my old art studio and friends. One afternoon, while Lily napped, a knock at the door startled me. It was Angela, holding a plate of cookies. "Thought you might need a pick-me-up," she said, breezing past me into the kitchen. "How are you settling in?" I followed, feeling oddly defensive in my own home. "Fine, thanks. Chris is loving his new job." Angela's eyes sparkled. "Oh, I know. We had lunch yesterday. He's quite the charmer, isn't he?" My stomach clenched. "You had lunch?" "Just a quick bite in the cafeteria," she waved dismissively. "Did he not mention it? Anyway, there's a neighborhood barbecue this weekend. You simply must come." After she left, I stood in the kitchen, Angela's words echoing in my mind. Why hadn't Chris mentioned lunch? That evening, as we ate dinner, I casually asked, "How's work going? Meet any new people?" Chris nodded, mouthful of pasta. "It's great. Everyone's been really welcoming." I waited, but he didn't elaborate. "Anyone in particular?" He shrugged. "Not really. Oh, did I mention there's a company picnic coming up?" I set down my fork. "Actually, Angela invited us to a neighborhood barbecue. Same day, probably." Chris's face lit up. "Perfect. We can do both. The picnic's in the afternoon. We can hit the barbecue after." I pushed my food around my plate. "You seem awfully excited about the barbecue." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'm excited about making friends here, Nora. This move was hard on all of us. I want it to work." I nodded, guilt washing over me. Was I being paranoid? The barbecue arrived, and I found myself surrounded by Angela's friends. They were all impossibly fit, sipping wine and trading neighborhood gossip. "Oh, Nora," one woman said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "It must be so hard being pregnant in a new city, and with Chris working such long hours." Another chimed in. "At least he has Angela to keep him company at work. She's such a dear, always looking out for the new employees." My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" The women exchanged glances. "Oh, nothing, dear. It's just nice that he has a friendly face at the office." I scanned the yard, spotting Chris and Angela by the grill, laughing at some private joke. As I watched, she placed her hand on his arm, leaning in close to whisper something. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What was really going on here? As we drove home that night, Chris chatted happily about the new friends we'd made. I stared out the window, my mind racing. "Nora? You okay?" Chris asked, concern in his voice. I turned to him, searching his face. "Chris, is there something you're not telling me?" Chris's face paled at my question. "What do you mean? I've told you everything." I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. "It's just... you and Angela seem awfully close." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Nora, she's just being friendly. You're reading too much into this." I let it drop, but sleep eluded me that night. The next morning, while Chris was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I checked his phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages. There it was, a thread with Angela. My heart raced as I opened it. "Great seeing you today. Lunch again tomorrow?" "Absolutely. Same time, same place." "Can't wait. You always brighten my day." I felt sick. The messages weren't explicitly romantic, but the familiarity, the frequency, it was all wrong. Chris's footsteps approached. I quickly put the phone down, my mind reeling. "Hey, honey," he said, kissing my cheek. "I'm heading out. Big presentation today." I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Good luck," I managed to choke out. As soon as he left, I burst into tears. Lily toddled over, her little face scrunched with concern. "Mama sad?" I pulled her close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "No, sweetheart. Mama's okay." But I wasn't okay. Far from it. That afternoon, I took Lily to the park, desperate for a distraction. As she played in the sandbox, I sat on a nearby bench, lost in thought. Mind if I join you? I looked up to see an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair. Please, I gestured to the empty seat. I'm Marianne, she said, settling beside me. You look like you could use a friendly ear. Something about her warmth broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole story. The move, Angela, the text messages. Marianne listened without judgment, her eyes filled with understanding. When I finished, she took my hand. Oh, honey, I've been where you are. What did you do? I asked, desperate for guidance. She smiled sadly. I ignored it, convinced myself I was imagining things. Don't make my mistake, Nora. Trust your instincts. As we talked, Lily ran over, proudly showing off a handful of pebbles. Marianne's face lit up. What a beautiful collection. You must be so proud of your mommy. Lily beamed, then ran back to play. Marianne turned to me, her expression serious. Whatever you decide to do, remember, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for her, too. Her words struck a chord. I thought of the baby growing inside me, of Lily's innocent face. They deserved better than this. But how can I be sure? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Marianne squeezed my hand. You dig deeper, gather evidence, and when you know for certain, you act. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, Chris's phone in my hands. He was working late again, or so he said. With trembling fingers, I opened his location history. My breath caught as I saw an unfamiliar address, visited multiple times over the past weeks. I grabbed my car keys, determination overriding my fear. It was time to see for myself. The address led me to a small apartment complex. As I pulled up, I saw Chris's car parked outside. My heart pounded as I approached the building. Through a ground-floor window, I saw them, Chris and Angela, sitting close on a couch, laughing over glasses of wine. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. It was real. It was all real. As I drove home, tears blurring my vision, one thought echoed in my mind. What am I going to do now? The annual company picnic loomed, and I dreaded every second of it. But I had to go. I needed to see Chris and Angela together with my own eyes. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was an innocent explanation for everything. As we arrived at the park, Chris squeezed my hand. You okay? You've been quiet lately. I forced a smile. Just tired. The pregnancy, you know. He nodded, distracted by something over my shoulder. Oh, there's Angela. I promised I'd help her set up the volleyball net. Before I could respond, he was gone, jogging towards that familiar blonde ponytail. I watched as they laughed together, their bodies in perfect sync as they worked. Mama, swing! Lily tugged at my hand, pulling me towards the playground. As I pushed Lily on the swing, my eyes never left Chris and Angela. They were always near each other, sharing private jokes, touching casually. It was like watching a dance I wasn't part of. Your husband seems close with Angela, a voice beside me said. It was one of the women from the neighborhood barbecue. I stiffened. They're just colleagues. She raised an eyebrow. If you say so, dear. But if I were you, I'd keep a closer eye on them. Anger flared in my chest. How dare she? But as I opened my mouth to retort, I realized she was right. I needed to know the truth, once and for all. As the afternoon wore on, I lost sight of Chris. Panic rose in my throat. Where was he? Where was Angela? Lisa, can you watch Lily for a minute? I asked another mom. I need to find Chris. I searched the crowded park, my heart pounding. Then I saw them, ducking behind a storage shed at the far end of the field. Without thinking, I followed. As I approached, I heard Angela's lilting laugh. Oh, Chris, you're terrible. You love it, Chris's voice replied, low and intimate. I peered around the corner of the shed, and my world shattered. Chris had Angela pressed against the wall, his lips on her neck, her hands tangled in his hair. A strangled gasp escaped me. They sprang apart, guilt written all over their faces. Nora! Chris exclaimed, his face pale. It's not. This isn't. But I was already running, tears blurring my vision. I heard Chris calling after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I found myself at the playground, scooping up a confused Lily. We're going home, baby, I choked out. But Daddy? She asked, looking around. Daddy's busy, I said, my voice breaking. As I buckled Lily into her car seat, Chris caught up to us. Nora, please, let me explain. I whirled on him, fury and pain coursing through me. Explain what, Chris? How you've been lying to me? How you've been sneaking around with her? He reached for me, but I jerked away. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. It was a mistake, he pleaded. It didn't mean anything. I love you, Nora. You and Lily are my world. I laughed bitterly. Your world? Is that why you've been spending every spare moment with her? Chris's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk about this? We can fix this. For a moment, I wavered. I thought of our life together, of Lily, of the baby on the way, but then I remembered the sight of him with Angela, and my resolve hardened. I don't know if we can fix this, Chris, I said, my voice cold. I don't know if I want to. As I drove away, leaving Chris standing alone in the parking lot, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. What would I do now? How would I tell Lily? Could I raise 2 children on my own? But beneath the fear and uncertainty, a small voice whispered, You're stronger than you know. You can do this. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a plan already forming in my mind. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I hadn't slept in days. Chris's desperate calls and messages went unanswered as I grappled with the shattered pieces of my life. Lily's confused tears only deepened my anguish. How could I explain that Daddy wasn't coming home? One particularly rough morning, I found myself back at the park, hoping the fresh air might clear my head. Lily was with my mother, giving me a rare moment alone. Nora? A familiar voice called. It was Marianne, the kind older woman I'd met before. Oh, honey, you look like you've been through hell. The sympathy in her eyes broke something in me. Before I knew it, I was sobbing, pouring out the whole sordid story between gasps. Marianne listened, her face a mix of compassion and anger. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. You're stronger than you realize, Nora, but you need to be smart about this. What do you mean? I asked, wiping my eyes. She leaned in, her voice low. Men like Chris, they're good at spinning tales. You need hard evidence before you make any decisions. I shook my head. I saw them together. What more evidence do I need? For yourself? Nothing. But for a divorce, for custody, you need more. Marianne's eyes hardened. I made the mistake of confronting my ex-husband without proof. He turned it all around on me, made me doubt myself. I won't let that happen to you. Her words sent a chill through me. What should I do? Dig deeper, she said firmly. Get into his email, his bank statements, follow him if you have to, and don't let on that you know anything. The thought of pretending everything was normal made me sick. I don't know if I can face him. Marianne squeezed my hand. You can, and you will, for Lily and for that baby you're carrying. They deserve better, and so do you. As I drove home, Marianne's advice echoed in my mind. Could I really play the role of the unsuspecting wife? The thought of Chris touching me, kissing me, while I knew about Angela, made my skin crawl. But as I walked into our house, the house we'd chosen together, filled with memories and dreams, resolve steeled my spine. I would do whatever it took to protect my children and myself. That evening, when Chris came home, I forced myself to greet him with a smile. Hi, honey. How was work? The relief on his face was palpable. It was, Good. Nora, can we talk? I nodded, my heart racing. Of course. We sat on the couch, an ocean of unspoken words between us. Chris took a deep breath. About what happened at the picnic, it was a horrible mistake. Angela means nothing to me. You and Lily are everything. I wanted to scream, to throw his lies back in his face. Instead, I said softly, I overreacted. I've been so emotional with the pregnancy. Can we just start over? The hope that bloomed in Chris's eyes made me want to vomit. He pulled me into a hug, murmuring apologies and promises. Over his shoulder, my eyes fell on a framed photo of us with Lily, my beautiful, innocent daughter, my unborn child. They deserved the truth, whatever it might be. In that moment, I made my decision. I would play along, gather evidence, and when the time was right, I would bring it all crashing down. As Chris held me, thinking all was forgiven, I began to plan. I would leave no stone unturned, no secret unexposed. And when I was done, Chris and Angela would regret ever underestimating me. The game was on, and I intended to win. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. I played the role of the forgiving wife perfectly, all while gathering evidence with Marianne's help. We combed through bank statements, tracked Chris's movements, and even hired a private investigator. One rainy afternoon, Marianne and I huddled over my laptop, sifting through the latest batch of information from the PI. Look at this. Marianne pointed to a series of transactions. Regular withdrawals, always the same amount, always on Fridays. My heart sank. The day he claims to work late. Marianne squeezed my hand. We've got him, Nora. Now we just need the final piece of evidence. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the PI. Meeting confirmed. Sending location now. I stood up, adrenaline coursing through me. This is it. I'm going. Marianne looked concerned. Are you sure? I could go instead. I shook my head. No, I need to see this with my own eyes. The drive to the motel was a blur. Rain lashed against the windshield, matching the storm in my heart. I parked across the street, my eyes fixed on room 12. At exactly 7 p.m., a familiar car pulled up. Chris stepped out, looking around furtively before knocking on the door. Angela answered, pulling him inside. I felt numb. Even after everything, a part of me had hoped it wasn't true. I raised my phone, capturing video of Chris entering the room. Suddenly, a tap on my window made me jump. It was the PI, gesturing for me to roll down the window. Mrs. Thompson, I've got audio set up in the room. Do you want to listen? I hesitated, then nodded. He handed me a small device with headphones. Chris's voice came through clearly. I can't keep doing this, Angela. Nora's pregnant. I need to focus on my family. Angela's laugh was cold. Oh, please, you've been saying that for months. Face it, Chris, you're not happy with her. You never have been. That's not true, Chris protested weakly. Then why are you here? Angela challenged. There was a long pause, then the unmistakable sound of kissing. I ripped off the headphones, bile rising in my throat. I'd heard enough. As I drove home, my mind raced. I had all the evidence I needed now. But what would I do with it? Marianne was waiting when I got back. One look at my face told her everything. Oh, honey, she said, pulling me into a hug. I'm so sorry. As I recounted what I'd seen and heard, Marianne's expression hardened. He doesn't deserve you, Nora. It's time to take back your life. But how? I asked, feeling lost. A quiet divorce? Try to keep it civil for Lily's sake? Marianne shook her head. No. Men like Chris, they need to be exposed. Publicly. It's the only way they learn. Her words ignited something in me. Years of suppressed anger, of putting everyone else first, of dimming my own light. It all came rushing to the surface. You're right, I said, my voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. No more hiding. No more pretending. It's time everyone knew the truth. Marianne smiled, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. That's my girl. Now let's plan this out properly. We want maximum impact. As we strategized late into the night, a part of me wondered if this was too far. Was public humiliation really the answer? But then I thought of Lily, of the baby I was carrying. I thought of all the women who had been in my shoes, who had suffered in silence. No more. It was time to reclaim my voice, my power, my life. As Marianne and I finalized our plan, I felt a mix of exhilaration and terror. In just a few days, everything would change. There was no going back now. I placed a hand on my growing belly, whispering a promise. We're going to be okay. Mama's going to make sure of it. The annual neighborhood block party was in full swing. Families mingled, kids ran around with sticky faces, and the air was thick with the smell of barbecue. I stood on the periphery, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Marianne appeared at my side, a reassuring presence. Are you ready? I nodded, unable to speak. In my hand, I clutched a USB drive containing all the evidence of Chris and Angela's affair. Photos, videos, bank statements, everything. Chris was at the grill, playing the role of perfect husband and neighbor. Angela hovered nearby, laughing too loudly at his jokes. The sight of them together made my blood boil. Remember, Marianne whispered, wait for my signal. I watched as she made her way to the makeshift stage where the karaoke machine was set up. She tapped the microphone, drawing everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, Marianne announced, we have a special presentation from our very own Nora Thompson. This was it, my moment of truth. As I walked to the stage, Chris caught my eye. He smiled, oblivious to what was about to happen. I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I really going to do this? Then I saw Angela place her hand on Chris's arm, and my resolve hardened. I plugged in the USB drive and grabbed the microphone. I have a story to tell you all, I began, my voice shaky but gaining strength. A story about betrayal, lies, and the importance of truth. The crowd fell silent, sensing the gravity in my tone. Chris's smile faltered. For months I've been living a lie, I continued, pretending everything was fine while my husband carried on an affair with our neighbor. Gasps rippled through the audience. Chris's face drained of color. Angela tried to slip away, but Marianne blocked her path. "I have proof," I said, pressing play on the first video. Chris and Angela's voices filled the air, discussing their secret meetings. The crowd watched in stunned silence as image after image appeared on the screen. Chris entering the motel, bank statements showing his withdrawals, text messages full of intimate details. I locked eyes with Chris. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was too stupid, too trusting?" He started towards the stage. "Nora, please." "No," I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. "You don't get to speak now. You've done enough talking behind my back." As the evidence continued to play, I saw the reactions around me. Shock, disgust, pity. Angela had collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Chris stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. But then I heard a small voice. "Mommy?" Lily stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. My triumph turned to ash in my mouth. What had I done? I stumbled off the stage, pushing past the murmuring crowd to reach my daughter. As I scooped her up, I caught sight of Chris. The devastation on his face mirrored my own. "Nora," he choked out, "I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk?" But it was too late. The damage was done. As I carried Lily away from the chaos, Marianne caught up with us. "You did it, Nora. You showed them all." "No," I cut her off, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. "This wasn't right. Not like this." Marianne's expression hardened. "Don't go soft now. He deserved this." I looked at Lily, clinging to me in confusion, then back at the devastation I'd left behind. Maybe he did, but Lily didn't, and neither did I. As we walked away from the party, the sounds of shock and gossip fading behind us, I realized the bitter truth. In my quest for revenge, I'd hurt the very people I was trying to protect. The triumph I'd imagined felt hollow. Instead of closure, I was left with a gnawing question. What do I do now? The days following the block party were a blur of tears, hushed conversations, and sleepless nights. Chris moved out, staying with a friend. I was left alone with Lily, trying to explain why Daddy wasn't home. One afternoon, as Lily napped, I sat in my makeshift art studio, staring at a blank canvas. For the first time in years, I felt the urge to paint. As I picked up a brush, there was a knock at the door. It was Chris, looking haggard and remorseful. "Can we talk?" I nodded, letting him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the weight of our broken marriage between us. "I'm so sorry, Nora," Chris began, his voice cracking. "What I did was unforgivable. I understand if you want a divorce." I took a deep breath. I thought I did, but seeing Lily's face that day, it made me realize revenge isn't the answer. Chris looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we owe it to Lily and to this baby," I placed a hand on my swollen belly, "to try and work through this. But things have to change, Chris. I won't be taken for granted again." We talked for hours, laying everything bare. Chris's insecurities about providing for the family, my resentment at giving up my art, the breakdown in our communication. It was painful, but cathartic. "I want to go to counseling," I said firmly. "Both of us, together and separately, and I'm going back to painting. It's not negotiable." Chris nodded eagerly. "Anything you want, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." As we talked, I felt a shift within me. The anger that had consumed me for so long began to ebb, replaced by a sense of empowerment. I wasn't just Chris's wife or Lily's mother. I was Nora, artist, woman, survivor. Weeks turned into months. Chris threw himself into therapy, taking on more responsibilities at home. I set up a proper studio and started selling my paintings online. Slowly, we rebuilt trust. One evening, as we tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Are you and Daddy happy now?" I looked at Chris, seeing the man I fell in love with, changed but somehow stronger. "We're working on it, sweetie, every day." As her due date approached, Nora found herself in her studio, working on a new piece. It was a self-portrait, not the meek housewife she'd become, but the strong, resilient woman she'd discovered. Chris appeared in the doorway, a mug of tea in hand. "That's incredible, Nora. It's so you." I smiled, really smiled for the first time in months. "It is, isn't it?" He set the tea down and wrapped his arms around me, careful of my belly. "I'm so proud of you and grateful you gave us another chance." I leaned into him, feeling our baby kick. "We've both changed, Chris. This isn't the life I imagined, but maybe it's the one we needed." As I put the finishing touches on my self-portrait, I realized that this, the messy, complicated, beautiful life we were rebuilding, was my masterpiece. The next day, I received an email from a gallery in the city. They wanted to feature my work in an upcoming show. As I shared the news with Chris, watching his face light up with genuine pride, I knew we'd be okay. Not perfect, but okay. That night, as we lay in bed, Chris's hand on my belly, I thought about the journey we'd been on. The pain, the betrayal, the near destruction of everything we'd built. But I also thought about the strength I'd found, the voice I'd reclaimed. I wasn't just Chris's wife or Lily's mother anymore. I was Nora Thompson, artist, survivor, woman reborn. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, I knew I had the strength to face them, not just for my family, but for myself. The canvas of our life wasn't perfect. It had its dark spots, its messy streaks, but it was ours, and it was beautiful in its own way. And I, Nora Thompson, was the artist holding the brush. You're never going to be as perfect as my mother. Jasper's words cut through the air like a knife. I stand there stunned as my husband of 5 years glares at me with a mixture of anger and contempt. I'm not your mother, and I never will be, I shoot back, my voice trembling with rage. I'm done trying to live up to her impossible standards. Jasper scoffs, rolling his eyes. You couldn't even if you tried. She's everything you're not, elegant, refined, and knows how to keep a home. I feel my blood boil. Is that what you want? A housewife who caters to your every whim? Well, I've got news for you, Jasper. I'm my own person, with my own dreams and aspirations. I won't be your little puppet. He steps closer, his face inches from mine. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. I thought you'd be different, but you're just like all the rest, selfish and ungrateful. Tears sting my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. If wanting to be treated with respect and equality makes me selfish, then so be it. I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself. Jasper's jaw clenches, and for a moment I think he might hit me. But instead he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. How did we get here? When did the man I fell in love with turn into this cruel, controlling stranger? I think back to our early days when Jasper was charming and attentive. He swept me off my feet with grand gestures and promises of a beautiful future together. But as soon as we said I do, everything changed. At first it was subtle. A snide comment here, a disapproving look there. But over time his behavior became more overt. He started dictating what I could wear, who I could see, and how I should spend my time. He even convinced me to quit my job, claiming that he wanted me to focus on being a homemaker. I thought I could handle it, that I could be the perfect wife he wanted. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. And now as I sit here on the cold, hard floor, I realize that I've lost myself in the process. A sudden wave of determination washes over me. I won't let Jasper break me. I won't let him control my life any longer. I push myself up, wiping away the tears that have managed to escape. It's time to take back my power, to rediscover the strong, independent woman I once was. I don't know how I'll do it, but I know I can't continue living like this. As I stand there, staring at the closed door, I make a silent vow to myself. I will find a way out of this toxic marriage, no matter what it takes. I will rebuild my life on my own terms, and I will never again let anyone dim my light. With a deep breath, I take my first step towards freedom, towards the future I know I deserve. It won't be easy, but I'm ready to fight for it, for myself and for the life I know I'm meant to live. As I sit in my car, parked outside Naomi's house, I can't help but reflect on the past 5 years of my marriage. How did I let things get so bad? I used to be a strong, independent woman, but somehow Jasper managed to chip away at my self-esteem, piece by piece. I think back to the early warning signs. The way he would criticize my cooking, my appearance, even the way I laughed. At first, I brushed it off as him being particular, but now I see it for what it was, a systematic attempt to control every aspect of my life. And then there were the lies. The late nights at the office, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden trips out of town. I always had a nagging suspicion that something wasn't right, but I never had the courage to confront him. Until now. I take a deep breath and exit the car, making my way up the path to Naomi's front door. She opens it before I even have a chance to knock, enveloping me in a tight hug. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispers, leading me inside. I've been worried sick about you. We settle onto her couch, and I pour out my heart, telling her everything that's happened over the past few weeks. The arguments, the accusations, the growing distance between Jasper and me. I think he's cheating on me, I confess, my voice barely above a whisper. With his new secretary, Scarlett. Naomi's eyes widen. That little tramp? I knew there was something off about her the moment I met her. I nod, feeling a mix of anger and despair wash over me. I don't know what to do. Naomi, I feel like I'm losing my mind. She takes my hand, her expression fierce. You need to find out the truth, Arya. You deserve to know what's really going on. I bite my lip, hesitating. But how? Jasper's so secretive. He barely lets me near his phone or computer. Naomi leans in, a glint of determination in her eyes. Leave that to me. I have a friend who's a private investigator. He owes me a favor. I feel a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I can finally get the answers I need. Over the next few days, Naomi's friend tails Jasper, gathering evidence of his infidelity. When he presents me with the proof, photos of Jasper and Scarlett in compromising positions, recordings of their intimate conversations, I feel like I've been punched in the gut. But beneath the pain, there's a simmering rage. How dare he betray me like this? How dare he make a mockery of our marriage vows? I confront Jasper that night, throwing the evidence in his face. He has the audacity to deny it at first, but when he realizes he's been caught, his demeanor changes. So what if I'm sleeping with her? He sneers, his eyes cold. It's not like you're fulfilling my needs. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife. I see red. Before I know what I'm doing, I'm screaming at him, hurling every insult I can think of. He matches me, word for word, his voice rising until we're both shouting at the top of our lungs. And then, suddenly, he's on me, his hands around my throat, squeezing the air from my lungs. I claw at his fingers, gasping for breath, but he's too strong. Black spots dance in my vision as I feel myself slipping away. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in a hospital bed, my head throbbing and my arm in a cast. The doctors tell me I'm lucky to be alive, that I suffered a concussion and a broken arm from falling down the stairs. But I know the truth. Jasper pushed me. And if it hadn't been for a neighbor hearing the commotion and calling the police, I might not have survived. As I lie there, bruised and broken, I make a decision. I won't let Jasper win. I won't let him destroy me. I'll do whatever it takes to bring him to justice and rebuild my life, even if it means facing my darkest fears and confronting the ugliest parts of myself. The hospital room is cold and sterile, the beeping of machines my only company. I stare at the stark white ceiling, trying to process the events of the past few hours. How could Jasper do this to me? How could he hurt me like this? As if on cue, the door opens and my father Henry walks in. His face is etched with worry, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Arya, my baby girl, he whispers, rushing to my bedside. I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? I try to smile, but it comes out as more of a grimace. I've been better, Dad, but I'll survive. He takes my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I know you will, sweetheart. You're the strongest person I know. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I don't feel very strong right now. I feel like a fool for not seeing Jasper for who he really is. My father's expression hardens. That man is a monster. I always had a bad feeling about him, but I never imagined he'd go this far. I nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. There's more, Dad. I found out he's been embezzling money from his father's company, and he's been using it to fund his affair with his secretary. Henry's eyes widen. Embezzlement? Affair? Jesus, Arya, you need to get away from him. Press charges. Make him pay for what he's done. I hesitate, fear gripping my heart. But what if he comes after me? What if he tries to hurt me again? My father's jaw clenches. He won't get the chance. I'll make sure of it. I may be retired, but I still have connections on the force. We'll get a restraining order, and I'll personally see to it that he's arrested for assault. Relief washes over me, followed by a sudden wave of nausea. I lurch forward, my hand flying to my mouth. Arya, what's wrong? My father asks, alarmed. I shake my head, trying to steady my breathing. I don't know. I just feel sick all of a sudden. A nurse enters the room, a clipboard in hand. Miss Hawthorne, I have your test results back. I look up, my heart pounding. Test results? What test results? The nurse gives me a sympathetic smile. The pregnancy test, dear. Congratulations. You're going to be a mother. The room spins, and I feel like I might pass out. Pregnant? How can this be happening? I can't bring a child into this mess. I can't let Jasper have any more power over me. My father squeezes my hand, his voice gentle. Arya, listen to me. This baby is a blessing, a chance for a fresh start. You can do this. You can be an amazing mother. I close my eyes, trying to imagine a future where I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for Jasper to strike. A future where my child is safe and loved and protected. You're right, Dad, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. I can do this. I have to do this. For my baby and for myself. I open my eyes, a newfound determination coursing through my veins. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure Jasper pays for everything he's done, to me and to his family's company. My father nods, a proud smile on his face. That's my girl. I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll get through this together. As I lie there, my hand resting on my still flat stomach, I feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this baby is a sign. A reminder that even in the darkest of times there's still a chance for light, for love, for a future worth fighting for. And fight I will. With every ounce of strength I have left in me, for my child, and for the woman I know I can become. Jasper may have broken my bones, but he'll never break my spirit. Not now, not ever. The divorce papers feel heavy in my hands as I sit across from Jasper and his mother, Evelyn. Her eyes are cold, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Arya, dear, she says, her voice dripping with false concern. Are you sure this is what you want? A divorce is so final. Think of the family name. Think of Jasper's reputation. I feel a surge of anger. Jasper's reputation? What about my well-being? What about the fact that he pushed me down the stairs and nearly killed me and our unborn child? Evelyn waves a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It was an accident. Jasper would never intentionally hurt you. I laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. An accident? Is that what he told you? Well, let me tell you the truth, Evelyn. Your son is a monster. He's been cheating on me, embezzling money, and abusing me for years. And I'm done. I'm done being his punching bag and his doormat. Jasper leans forward, his eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Arya. You'll never survive without me. You're nothing without me. I meet his gaze, unflinching. That's where you're wrong, Jasper. I'm everything without you, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done, to me and to your father's company. Evelyn gasps, her hand flying to her chest. What are you talking about? Jasper would never steal from his own father. I slide a folder across the table. I have proof. Bank statements, emails, recordings. He's been embezzling for years, using the money to fund his lavish lifestyle and his affair with his secretary. Jasper's face pales, and for a moment I see a flicker of fear in his eyes. But then it's gone, replaced by cold, hard rage. You bitch! He snarls, lunging across the table. I'll kill you for this. But before he can reach me, my father steps forward, placing himself between us. Touch her again, and I'll make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life. Evelyn is sobbing now, her carefully crafted facade crumbling. Jasper, tell me it's not true. Tell me this is all a misunderstanding. But Jasper says nothing, his jaw clenched tight. I can see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find a way out of this mess. I stand up, my head held high. It's over, Jasper. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking full custody of our child. You'll pay child support, and you'll stay away from us. Forever. I turn to Evelyn, my voice softening. I know you love your son, Evelyn, but he needs help. He needs to face the consequences of his actions, and if you truly care about him, you'll let him do that. With that, I walk out of the room, my father by my side. I feel a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of freedom I haven't felt in years. But I know this is just the beginning. Jasper won't go down without a fight. He'll try to weasel his way out of this, to manipulate the system in his favor. But I'm ready. I have the truth on my side, and I have the support of the people who love me. My father, Naomi, now my unborn child. As I step out into the sunlight, I take a deep breath, feeling the warmth on my face. For the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Hope for a better future, a future free from fear and pain. I place a hand on my stomach, a small smile playing at the corners of my lips. It's just you and me now, little one, but we're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this, and we're going to come out stronger on the other side. And with that, I take my first steps towards my new life, my head held high and my heart full of determination. Jasper may have broken my bones, but he'll never break my spirit. Not now, not ever. The weeks following my confrontation with Jasper and Evelyn are a blur of legal meetings and doctor's appointments. My father, true to his word, has been by my side every step of the way, helping me navigate the complex world of divorce proceedings and criminal investigations. Today we sit in his study, poring over the evidence he's managed to gather on Jasper's shady dealings. Bank statements, phone records, surveillance photos, it's all there, painting a damning picture of a man consumed by greed and power. I've seen a lot of scumbags in my time on the force, my father says, shaking his head. But Jasper takes the cake. The things he's done, the people he's hurt, it's unforgivable. I nod, my eyes fixed on a particularly incriminating email exchange between Jasper and a known associate of the mob. I just don't understand how he could do this, how he could betray his own family, his own wife, for money and power. My father sighs, leaning back in his chair. Some people are just wired differently, Arya. They don't have a conscience or a sense of right and wrong. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want, no matter who gets hurt in the process. I feel a chill run down my spine, remembering the cold, calculating look in Jasper's eyes as he lunged at me across the table. Do you think he'll go to prison? For the embezzlement and for what he did to me? My father nods, his jaw set in determination. I'll make damn sure of it. I've already turned over all the evidence to the authorities. They're building a case against him as we speak. Relief washes over me, followed by a sudden wave of fear. But what if he tries to come after me? What if he tries to take our child away? My father leans forward, taking my hand in his. Arya, listen to me. I won't let that happen. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and my grandchild safe. Even if it means putting myself between you and Jasper. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes, and I squeeze my father's hand. I don't know what I'd do without you, Dad. You've been my rock through all of this. He smiles, his eyes soft with love. That's what fathers are for, sweetheart, to protect their children, no matter what. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of the past few months hanging heavy in the air. Finally, my father clears his throat, his expression turning serious. There's something else you should know, Arya. Something about Jasper's past. I feel a knot form in the pit of my stomach. What is it? My father takes a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he's about to say. I did some digging, and it turns out this isn't the first time Jasper's been accused of domestic violence. His ex-girlfriend, a woman named Tara, filed a restraining order against him years ago. She claimed he beat her, threatened to kill her if she ever left him. I feel like I might be sick. Oh my God, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't anyone warn me? My father shakes his head, his expression grim. He had it sealed, buried deep, probably paid off a judge or two to make it go away. But it's all coming out now. The truth always has a way of coming to light. I close my eyes, trying to process this new information. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? But even as I berate myself, I feel a new sense of determination taking hold. I won't let Jasper get away with this. I won't let him hurt anyone else the way he hurt me. I open my eyes, meeting my father's gaze with a steely resolve. We have to stop him, Dad. We have to make sure he never lays a hand on another woman again. My father nods, a proud smile playing at the corners of his lips. That's my girl. We'll take him down, Arya, together, and we'll make sure he pays for every last one of his sins. The sound of shattering glass jolts me awake, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I'm disoriented, my mind still foggy with sleep. But then I hear it again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps creeping through my apartment. Fear grips me, cold and paralyzing. I know it's Jasper. I can feel it in my bones. He's come for me, just like I always feared he would. I reach for my phone with shaking hands, dialing 911. But before I can even get a word out, my bedroom door bursts open and there he is. His eyes wild, his face contorted with rage. You stupid bitch, he snarls, stalking towards me. You thought you could ruin me? You thought you could take everything away from me? I scramble out of bed, my legs tangling in the sheets. Jasper, please, don't do this. Think about our child. He laughs, the sound harsh and mocking. Our child? You mean the bastard you're carrying? That thing is no child of mine. Tears stream down my face as I back away from him, my eyes darting around the room for an escape. But he's blocking the only exit, his body coiled with menace. I'm going to make you pay, Arya. I'm going to make you suffer for what you've done to me. He lunges at me, his hands outstretched. I dodge to the side, my instincts taking over. I've spent years being his victim, but not anymore. Not tonight. I grab the lamp from my bedside table, swinging it with all my might. It connects with Jasper's head with a sickening crack, sending him stumbling backwards. I don't waste a second. I run, my bare feet pounding against the hardwood floors. I can hear Jasper behind me, his footsteps heavy and unsteady. I make it to the front door, my fingers fumbling with the lock. But before I can wrench it open, Jasper is on me, his hands wrapping around my throat. "You're not going anywhere," he growls, his breath hot against my face. "You're mine, Arya. You'll always be mine." Black spots dance in my vision as he squeezes tighter, cutting off my air supply. I claw at his hands, desperate for release, but he's too strong, too fueled by rage and hatred. Just as I feel myself slipping away, the sound of sirens pierces the air. Jasper's grip loosens, his head whipping towards the window. "Police! Open up!" he curses under his breath, releasing me. I collapse to the floor, gasping for air. The next few moments are a blur of shouts and splintering wood as the police break down the door. They swarm into the apartment, their guns drawn. "Jasper Hawthorne, you're under arrest for attempted murder and breaking and entering." I watch as they handcuff him, his eyes still blazing with fury. But as they lead him away, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's over. He can't hurt me anymore. My father is there, his arms wrapping around me in a tight embrace. "It's okay, Arya. You're safe now. He's never going to touch you again." I nod, my body shaking with sobs. "I thought he was going to kill me, Dad. I thought I was going to die." He strokes my hair, his voice soft and soothing. "But you didn't. You fought back. You survived. And now he's going to pay for everything he's done." As the adrenaline fades, I feel a new emotion taking hold, a fierce, burning anger. Jasper may be in custody, but this isn't over, not by a long shot. I'll see him brought to justice. I'll make sure he spends the rest of his miserable life behind bars, and I'll do it all for our child, the innocent life he so callously dismissed. I may be battered and bruised, but I'm not broken. I'm a survivor, and I'll never let anyone make me feel powerless again. The courtroom is packed, the air thick with tension. I sit at the prosecutor's table, my father and Naomi by my side. Jasper is across the aisle, his face a mask of cold indifference. The trial has been a grueling ordeal, each day bringing new revelations of Jasper's cruelty and deceit. But today, as the final witness takes the stand, I feel a sense of anticipation building in my chest. Scarlett, Jasper's former mistress, looks nervous as she's sworn in. Her eyes dart around the room, avoiding Jasper's icy stare. "Miss Johnson," the prosecutor begins, "can you please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant?" Scarlett takes a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "We were lovers. He told me he was going to leave his wife for me, that we were going to start a new life together." Jasper's lawyer jumps to his feet. "Objection. Relevance?" The judge waves him off. "Overruled. Continue, Miss Johnson." Scarlett nods, her voice growing stronger. "He promised me the world, but it was all a lie. He never had any intention of leaving Arya. He was just using me, like he used everyone else in his life." I feel a pang of sympathy for Scarlett, despite everything. She was just another pawn in Jasper's twisted game. The prosecutor presses on, his voice firm. "And what happened when you confronted him about his lies?" Scarlett's eyes fill with tears. "He hit me. He told me I was nothing, that I meant nothing to him. He said if I ever told anyone about us, he'd kill me." The courtroom erupts in gasps and murmurs. I glance at Jasper, expecting to see anger or defiance, but instead I see something else. Fear. As Scarlett steps down from the stand, the prosecutor calls his final witness. The state calls Evelyn Hawthorne to the stand. I watch in disbelief as Jasper's mother takes the oath, her face a mask of sorrow and regret. "Mrs. Hawthorne," the prosecutor says gently, "I know this must be difficult for you, but can you please tell the court about your son's behavior towards his wife?" Evelyn takes a shuddering breath, her eyes fixed on her hands. "I knew he was hurting her. I saw the bruises, heard the fights, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe my son could be capable of such things." She looks up. her gaze locking with mine. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm so sorry, Arya. I should have protected you. I should have stopped him. Tears stream down my face as Evelyn's words wash over me. For so long I thought I was alone in this fight. But now I see that I have allies in the most unexpected places. The prosecutor turns to the jury, his voice ringing with conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the evidence. You have heard the testimony of the brave women who survived Jasper Hawthorne's abuse. And now it's time for justice to be served. The jury deliberates for less than an hour before returning with their verdict, guilty on all counts. I feel a rush of emotion as the judge reads out the sentence, 25 years to life, with no chance of parole. It's over. It's finally over. As the bailiffs lead Jasper away, he turns to me, his eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over, Arya. I'll find a way to make you pay for this. But I just smile, my head held high. No, Jasper, you're the one who's going to pay for the rest of your miserable life. I walk out of the courtroom, my father and Naomi by my side. The sun is shining, the air crisp and clean. For the first time in years, I feel truly free. I know the road ahead won't be easy. I have a child to raise, a life to rebuild. But I also know that I'm not alone. I have the love and support of my family, my friends, and my own unbreakable spirit. And that's enough. That's more than enough. 5 years. That's how long it's been since I walked out of that courtroom, my head held high and my heart finally free. 5 years of raising my daughter, of building a life on my own terms, 5 years of healing, of learning to trust again, of rediscovering the strength that Jasper tried so hard to steal from me. But now, as I watch Lily play in the park, her laughter ringing out like a bell, I feel a familiar sense of unease creeping up my spine. Because today is the day that Jasper is being released from prison, his sentence cut short by some bureaucratic loophole that I still don't fully understand. I've been dreading this moment for months, ever since I got the call from the prison warden. I knew it was coming, but somehow I still feel unprepared. How do you face the man who nearly destroyed you, who left scars on your body and your soul that will never fully heal? I'm jolted out of my thoughts by a voice calling my name. I turn, my heart dropping into my stomach. It's Jasper, his face leaner and harder than I remember, his eyes still filled with that same cold hatred. Arya, he says, his voice dripping with false charm. It's been a long time. I stand up, my body tense and ready for a fight. What do you want, Jasper? He smiles, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. I want to see my daughter, of course. I have rights, you know. I shake my head, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. You lost those rights the moment you laid a hand on me, the moment you tried to kill me and our unborn child. Jasper takes a step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. Don't test me, Arya. I've spent the last 5 years dreaming of this moment, dreaming of the day I'd finally get to see you and Lily again. I stand my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. You'll never see her, Jasper, not as long as I'm alive. He laughs, the sound harsh and grating. You think you can stop me? You think you have any power here? I feel a sudden surge of strength, the same strength that carried me through the darkest days of my marriage, through the long and painful journey of rebuilding my life. I have all the power, Jasper, because I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not the same woman you married, the same woman you tried to break. I'm stronger now, stronger than you'll ever be. Jasper's face twists with rage, his hands balling into fists. But before he can take a step, I hear a voice calling out from behind me. Mommy! I turn, my heart swelling with love and pride as I see Lily running towards me, her face flushed with joy. I scoop her up into my arms, holding her close. Hey, baby girl, I murmur, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I love you so much. I turn back to Jasper, my voice steady and calm. This is my life now, Jasper. This is my family, and you have no place in it. Not now, not ever. For a moment, I see a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or even a hint of shame. But it's gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same cold, hard anger. This isn't over, Arya, he says, his voice low and menacing. You can't keep me from my own flesh and blood. I shake my head, a small smile playing at the corners of my lips. Watch me. And with that, I turn and walk away, Lily still nestled in my arms. I can feel Jasper's eyes boring into my back, but I don't look back. I don't give him the satisfaction. Because I know deep in my bones that I've already won. I've won the battle for my own soul, for my own happiness, and no matter what Jasper does, no matter how hard he tries, he'll never be able to take that away from me. I am a survivor, I am a warrior, and I will never, ever let anyone make me feel powerless again. Fine, then just do it already. Ethan's voice boomed from the kitchen into the living room, where I sat going through last week's expenses. Do what? I fired back, not looking up. You should transfer the money to her account. You know she's struggling. You gave her almost everything, didn't you? I closed my laptop, exhaling sharply. I don't think that's necessary, he said, his tone ice cold. He walked into the room, hand running through his messy hair. You're really cold-hearted, you know that? I flicked my eyes to him, challenging him silently. He didn't respond, just shook his head and walked away, leaving the tension in the air. The past few years of our marriage had been smooth. Ethan managed a bustling local cafe. I worked as a software developer. Our routines were mundane but comforting, until yesterday. It all started when our doorbell buzzed while we were having dinner. Ethan went to answer it, and I heard a woman's voice, shaky but familiar. Moments later, Ethan walked into the dining room, his sister Lindsay trailing behind. Rachel, this is Lindsay, Ethan said softly, barely able to look me in the eye. She needs a place to stay for a while. Lindsay, whom I had only heard about in passing, stood there looking much older than her 35 years. Her eyes darted around, never settling on anything for too long. She held onto a large duffel bag, knuckles white from the grip. I forced a smile. Of course, Lindsay, make yourself comfortable. Hours later, Ethan and Lindsay were talking in the kitchen while I sat stiffly on the couch, pretending to watch a show. Their voices were hushed, but I could catch bits and pieces. Something about financial distress, emotional burnout. None of it felt right. So, how long do you think she's staying? I asked Ethan as we got ready for bed. Not sure, he responded, his voice tired. Just until she gets back on her feet. I nodded, turning off the bedside lamp. Something gnawed at me, a sense of unease I couldn't shake off. The next morning, our usual routine was disrupted. Lindsay was already in the kitchen, making herself at home. Good morning, Rachel, she greeted with an unsettlingly cheerful tone. Morning, Lindsay, I replied, putting on a neutral mask. I grabbed my coffee and headed to my office, giving Ethan a quick peck on the cheek. See you tonight. Work was my solace. The lines of code calmed my racing thoughts, but Lindsay's sudden appearance crept in now and then. Every time I tried to focus, the image of her standing limply at our doorstep popped into my mind. When I returned home, I found Ethan and Lindsay laughing over some old stories. They didn't notice me come in. The scent of dinner wafted through the air, but I felt no appetite. Anything I need to know about your sister's return? I asked Ethan later that night. He sighed heavily. Lindsay's been through a lot, job losses, a rough divorce. She just needs time. But why now? I pressed. Why not reach out sooner? Rachel, please, he almost pleaded, just give her a chance. I closed my eyes, biting my lip. There was more to Lindsay's story, more than Ethan wanted to admit. I decided to keep a close eye on her. For now, I would play the supportive wife, but I knew I'd need to dig deeper. Lindsay was a storm brewing, and I could sense that she would disrupt the calm we had built. Over the next few days, my discomfort about Lindsay's presence only grew. Ethan's sister settled in like she had never left. I observed, my senses tuned to each interaction, every little change in the atmosphere of our home. Tensions were already simmering beneath the surface. One morning, I found Lindsay lounging on the sofa, remote in hand, feet propped up on the coffee table. Rachel, could you pass me some water? She asked, not even glancing away from the TV. I bit back a sharp retort, grabbed a glass of water, and handed it to her. Here, I said, my voice clipped. Thanks, she replied absent-mindedly. Ethan wasn't aware of these small moments. Whenever he was around, Lindsay transformed into the picture of humility, polite, and grateful. But when we were alone, a different side of her emerged. One evening, after dinner, Ethan had to rush back to the cafe to handle a staffing issue. Lindsay and I were left alone. I cleaned up, and she sat at the table flipping through a magazine. So, Rachel, have you thought about letting me borrow your car, just for a couple of days till I get things sorted? Lindsay asked, her tone casual but laced with expectation. I don't think that's a good idea, I replied, keeping my voice steady. We need it for work. Right, she said, smirking slightly. Ethan mentioned your job? A software developer, huh? Sounds demanding. It is, I said, sensing some form of judgment in her words. Must be nice, she added, not looking up. Having a stable job and all. I work hard for it, I countered, wiping the table a little too forcefully. I'm sure you do, she returned, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place. Just don't be too harsh on Ethan. He's always been a bit naive, you know. My hands froze, but I didn't rise to the bait. I finished my task in silence, leaving her still seated at the table. That night, as Ethan and I climbed into bed, I could feel the invisible weight of an impending storm. Another argument flared between Ethan and me a few days later. Lindsay needs our support, he insisted, his patience wearing thin. It's not about support, I argued back. It's about boundaries. She's becoming a burden. She's my sister, Rachel. We can't just throw her out because she's inconvenient, he stated firmly. In the days that followed, Lindsay's behavior only became more problematic. She stayed up late, making noise that kept us awake. I'd find the kitchen a mess after she cooked. She seemed to have little regard for the home we had so carefully maintained. Ethan, you have to talk to her, I said one night, frustration boiling over. I will, I promise, he said, tiredly rubbing his temples. But I knew he wouldn't. His blind spot for his sister was too large. One particularly exhausting evening, after catching Lindsay rummaging through my belongings in our bedroom, I had to force myself to stay calm. What are you doing? I demanded. Just looking for some socks, she replied innocently, though her eyes told a different story. We have a guest room for a reason, Lindsay. Please respect our space, I said, my voice hard. Lindsay didn't respond, just gave me a small smile that didn't reach her eyes and walked out. As I lay in bed that night, Ethan asleep beside me, I knew I needed to take action. Lindsay was becoming more than just a nuisance. She was a threat to the peace and stability of our home, and I wasn't going to let her tear everything apart. It was just a matter of how much more I could take before reaching my breaking point. The tension in the house was as sharp as a knife edge. Ethan was drifting away, drawn into Lindsay's world of manipulation. It was subtle at first, small remarks and suggestions, but over time it became clear Lindsay had a plan. One Saturday morning, Ethan sat down next to me with a sigh. Rachel, Lindsay thinks she's overstaying her welcome, he began cautiously. Does she? I replied, folding my arms. She suggested that maybe we could help her get back on her feet by giving her some financial help, he said, looking uneasy. No, Ethan. She's been here for weeks, and all she's done is create chaos, I replied sharply. She needs to show some initiative and find a job. Later, I overheard Lindsay talking to Ethan in the kitchen. Ethan, I feel like a burden, but Rachel? She's being so cold, she said softly, sniffling as if she was on the verge of tears. She's just stressed, Linz, Ethan replied, trying to console her. I don't think she wants me here. I'll leave if that's what you both want, she said, sounding pitiful. Ethan hesitated. No, we'll figure something out. Rachel just needs time. That evening, I found Lindsay rifling through our living room drawers. What are you looking for, Lindsay? I asked pointedly. I was just trying to find a pen, she responded, a hint of defiance in her eyes. Next time, ask, I said. She shrugged, the smirk playing on her lips, ever so slight, but I caught it. Dinner was a silent affair until Lindsay decided to stir the pot further. You know, Ethan, I overheard some people at the cafe talking. They said Rachel spends a lot of time with her male colleagues after work, she said casually, setting her fork down and giving me a sideways glance. I felt the accusation like a slap. Excuse me? I snapped. Oh, did I misunderstand? My mistake, she said, feigning innocence. Ethan looked troubled, his eyes darting between Lindsay and me. Rachel, is there something I should know? He asked, his voice low. Seriously, Ethan, you're going to believe this nonsense? I replied, my frustration hitting its peak. Lindsay's smirk returned. I'm sorry. I must have misheard, she added, pouring fuel on the fire. After dinner, I cornered Ethan. You know she's trying to turn you against me, right? I said, my voice trembling with anger. She's just stressed, Rachel. She didn't mean it, he said, rubbing his forehead. Open your eyes, Ethan. She's manipulating you. I shouted it without caring if Lindsay could hear. The argument spiraled with me accusing and Ethan defending. Lindsay's presence in our home became the tipping point for constant stress and bickering between us. One evening, I returned home to find Lindsay sprawled on the couch, chatting on her phone. "Yeah, they're out of town this weekend," she said, her eyes meeting mine before quickly looking away. "Who are you talking to?" I demanded. She ended the call abruptly. "Just a friend," she said, standing up. "Just a friend? Or are you making plans behind our backs?" I shot back. "Calm down, Rachel. It's nothing," she replied, but there was a knowing glint in her eyes. That night, as I tried to sleep beside an oblivious Ethan, I knew I was reaching my limit. Her subtle digs, the way she wrapped Ethan around her finger, it all pushed me closer to the edge. The house had turned into a battleground, and I was out of patience. Time was running out, and something had to change. I couldn't sit back and let Lindsay poison our lives any longer. It was time to take control before she destroyed everything we had built. The breaking point came faster than I expected. I came home to find Lindsay seated at the dining table, Ethan nowhere in sight. She looked up with a sly smile. "Rachel, you're home early," she said, her voice tinged with mock surprise. Before I could respond, she added, "I was hoping we could talk." I dropped my bag, feeling the tension coil in my stomach. "What's there to talk about, Lindsay?" She leaned back, folding her arms. "I need money," she said bluntly. "A lot of it. I have debts that won't go away on their own." I stared at her, disbelief and rage mingling. "How much are you talking about?" "10,000 should do," she replied, her tone casual. "I promise I'll pay you back once I'm on my feet." "No way," I said, shaking my head. "That's out of the question." Lindsay's face hardened. "Ethan will do it if you won't," she said, eyes narrowing. "And what makes you think he'll go behind my back?" I challenged. She shrugged. "You'd be surprised what a brother would do for his sister." At that moment, Ethan walked in, holding groceries. He looked between us, sensing the hostility. "What's going on?" "Lindsay wants $10,000, I said, not taking my eyes off her. Ethan's face went pale. "That's a lot of money, Linz." "I need it, Ethan. Desperately." Lindsay pleaded, turning her gaze on him with those manipulative eyes. "Would you really leave me stranded?" "Ethan, we can't. This has to stop," I said firmly. "We'll figure something out, Lindsay," he told her, avoiding my gaze. I felt a wave of fury. "Are you seriously considering this?" Lindsay turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't control him, Rachel." I grabbed my coat. "We'll talk about this later, Ethan. I need some air." I stormed out, my mind racing. As I walked, I knew something had to change. Lindsay was tearing us apart, and Ethan was blind to it. Later, Ethan and I confronted each other in the kitchen. "We can't keep going like this," I said, my voice raw. "She needs to leave." "Rachel, she's my sister," Ethan shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "I can't just abandon her." "Then maybe it's time to choose," I said quietly. "Her or us?" His eyes flashed with pain and indecision. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious, Ethan. She's destroying our marriage." That night, I began digging into Lindsay's past. I called a friend who worked in finance, asking for any information on Lindsay's dealings. The results were shocking. Lindsay had been involved in several financial scams, always slipping away before being caught. Armed with this evidence, I knew I had to confront Ethan. As we sat down the following evening, I laid out what I'd found. "I don't believe it," he said, shaking his head. "Lindsay wouldn't do this." "There's more," I pressed. "She's been manipulating you for years. Look at the pattern." Ethan looked at the papers, his face crumbling. "This can't be true." "It is," I said gently. "You need to see her for who she really is." Torn between his loyalty to his sister and the undeniable evidence before him, Ethan looked lost. "What do we do?" "We need to confront her," I said. "She can't stay here." Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling in. We walked to the living room together, ready to face Lindsay and expose her deceit. This confrontation would be the turning point, one way or another. Ethan and I entered the living room, ready for the confrontation. Lindsay was scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm about to crash down on her. "Lindsay, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Lindsay looked up, an eyebrow raised. "What's this about?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Rachel found something out. We need to discuss it." "About what?" she asked, her face an image of manufactured innocence. I stepped forward, handing her the documents. "Your financial history, the scams, the lies." Her eyes flicked over the pages. For a moment, her mask slipped, and fear flashed across her face. But she quickly recovered. "This is a misunderstanding." I can explain. Enough, Lindsay, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I've been defending you, but these facts don't lie. You're really going to believe her over me? Lindsay shot back, eyes narrowing. Your own sister? Ethan's face contorted with pain. Why, Lindsay? Why did you do this? She dropped the documents and stood up, anger radiating from her. What choice did I have? You wouldn't understand. You've always had everything handed to you. That's not true, Ethan said, shaking his head. Lindsay's laugh was cold. Isn't it? Mom and Dad doted on you while I was left picking up the pieces. You owe me, Ethan. You owe me for all those years. No, Ethan said, with a newfound strength. I owe you nothing for your deceit. I stepped in. It's time for you to leave, Lindsay. You've overstayed your welcome and soured our home. You think you're so perfect, Lindsay spat, turning her fury on me. This isn't over. I held her gaze. Yes, it is. Pack your bags and leave. Ethan stood beside me, his resolve now hardened. She's right. It's time to go. Lindsay looked between us, realizing she had lost. She grabbed her bag, stuffing her belongings inside. You'll regret this, both of you, she said, her voice full of venom. We'll survive, Ethan replied, his voice steady. As she walked out the door, Lindsay turned one last time, her eyes flashing with hatred. I'll be back, she promised. Just go, I said, shutting the door behind her. The house felt lighter immediately, but the damage lingered in the air. Ethan slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. How did it go so wrong? I sat beside him, placing a hand on his back. We'll get through this, I said softly. We'll rebuild. He looked up, eyes filled with remorse. I should have seen it. I'm so sorry, Rachel. We both missed the signs, I acknowledged, but now we move forward. The next days were difficult. We had to confront the fallout of Lindsay's stay and the rift it had caused. Ethan and I avoided deep conversations, focusing on mundane tasks and routines. One morning, as we sat in silence over breakfast, Ethan spoke up. I think we need help. Counseling, maybe. I looked at him, recognizing the sincerity in his eyes. I agree, I said. We can't heal this alone. Taking his hand, we made the decision to seek professional help. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were committed to finding our way back to each other, repairing what Lindsay had tried to destroy. The therapist's office was a neutral haven, beige walls and soft lighting, creating a calming atmosphere. Dr. Sandra Green, our therapist, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a steady demeanor. Ethan and I sat on the couch, feet almost touching but not quite. So what brings you both here today? Dr. Green asked, looking between us. Ethan took a deep breath. We need help. My sister Lindsay has caused a lot of turmoil in our marriage. We need to find a way to heal. Dr. Green nodded. Tell me about Lindsay and what happened. I shared the events of the past few weeks, from Lindsay's arrival to the discovery of her deceit. Dr. Green listened intently, making notes occasionally. When I finished, Ethan added, I feel guilty. I let her manipulate me, and it nearly ruined us. Dr. Green put down her pen. Let's focus on rebuilding trust. It's important to address the emotions you're both feeling. Through therapy sessions, we worked on our communication. We learned to express our feelings without anger and to listen without judgment. It was grueling, but I began to see glimpses of the bond we once had. One evening, after a particularly challenging session, Ethan and I sat in the living room, a comfortable silence between us. Thank you for sticking with this, he said quietly. I'm committed to us, Ethan. We can get through this, I replied, squeezing his hand. As the weeks passed, I found myself slowly letting go of the resentment I held towards Lindsay. However, one day, a phone call shattered our fragile peace. Ethan answered and immediately went pale. Lindsay, what do you want? He asked, his voice strained. I could hear her voice shrill and demanding through the phone. I need help, Ethan. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. Ethan looked at me, conflicted. I shook my head firmly. No, Ethan. We can't go through this again. You heard Rachel. You can't drag us down anymore, he said into the phone. You can't do this to me, Lindsay screamed. I'm your sister. Lindsay, you need to sort out your own life. We're done, Ethan said, ending the call. He looked at me, anguish etched on his face. I feel terrible, but I know it's for the best. You did the right thing, I said, embracing him. She needs to learn to stand on her own. Days turned into weeks, and slowly our lives returned to a semblance of normal. Then, one evening, we received another call, this time from Ethan's old friend, Mark. Ethan, I hate to be the one to tell you, but Lindsay is in bad shape. She got mixed up with some dangerous people. Ethan's face went white. What do you mean? He asked, his voice trembling. She's been trying to con people and it backfired badly. She's looking for help, but honestly, I don't know how much anyone can do now. Ethan hung up the phone, sitting down heavily. This is what I was afraid of. I sat next to him. It's harsh, but Lindsay's choices led her here. We learned that Lindsay had been arrested, seeking help too late, entangled in a mess of her own making. Ethan and I watched, both saddened and relieved. As we continued our therapy, Dr. Green helped us focus on moving forward. You can't change the past, she said, but you can decide how it shapes your future. Ethan and I took her words to heart. We worked harder on our relationship, setting clear boundaries and learning to trust again. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, we grew stronger. While Lindsay's downfall was tragic, it became a catalyst for understanding and growth in our marriage. Together, we faced the shadows of betrayal and began crafting a new chapter, one built on the lessons we'd learned and the resilience we discovered within ourselves. Ethan and I walked into Dr. Green's office for what felt like the 100th time. Today felt different. There was a heaviness, the knowledge that we were on the brink of a major decision. Rachel, Ethan, how are you both? Dr. Green asked, her warm smile suggesting she already knew the complexity of our feelings. Confused, conflicted, I admitted, but we're here to figure it out. Ethan nodded. We need clarity. Dr. Green put her pen down. Let's talk about what you need from each other moving forward. I took a deep breath. I need to feel safe in our relationship, Ethan. No more surprises, no more manipulations from outside influences. Ethan reached for my hand, and I need to know you're with me, Rachel, through thick and thin. I squeezed his hand. Always, if it means we can rebuild trust. Dr. Green nodded approvingly. It sounds like you're ready to make some difficult choices. What about Lindsay's influence? This was the moment. I turned to Ethan. Lindsay can't be a part of our lives if we're going to heal. She needs to seek professional help. Ethan swallowed hard. He looked at me, anguish clear on his face, but eventually nodded. It's what we have to do. That evening, back at home, Ethan made the call. It was short and definitive. Lindsay, this is how it has to be. You need to get professional help. We can't be involved anymore. I watched him hang up, feeling both relief and sorrow. I hope she gets the help she needs, Ethan said wearily, sinking into the couch. We did everything we could, I reassured him. As the days turned into weeks, we focused on healing. Every morning, I would catch Ethan looking reflective, but he would also smile more easily. One Saturday morning, Ethan suggested, let's go for a walk, just the two of us. We walked hand in hand through a nearby park, the crisp autumn air invigorating us. I missed this, I admitted. Me too, Ethan said, squeezing my hand. We'll make new memories, Rachel, better ones. Our walks became a ritual, a way to reconnect and reaffirm our commitment to each other. One afternoon, we decided to visit Jamie, my close friend and confidant, who had been supportive through this ordeal. Come in, you guys. Jamie greeted us warmly, leading us into her cozy living room. How are things? She asked, genuine concern in her eyes. We're taking it one day at a time, I said honestly. Jamie gave a knowing nod. You've both been through the ringer. It's good to see you're working on it. We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a relief to be with friends who supported our journey. Later, when we were home, Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. I want us to keep growing, Rachel. No more shadows. Agreed, I said, feeling the weight of his words. No more shadows. We continued our sessions with Dr. Green, each one bringing us closer and helping us rebuild. We learned to trust again, not just in each other, but in our future. Eventually, we felt strong enough to talk about the next steps. We should consider renewing our vows, Ethan suggested one day. A fresh start. I smiled at the idea. I think that's a wonderful idea. As we stood in front of a small group of friends and family, reaffirming our commitment, I felt the weight lift completely. We had faced betrayal, confronted our deepest fears, and come out stronger. To new beginnings we toasted, clinking our glasses together. In that moment, I knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally lifted, giving way to the bright promise of a future we would build together, free from the darkness of the past. The fresh start Ethan and I had hoped for was beginning to take shape. We focused on our healing, attending couples therapy regularly, and working on our communication. Each passing day brought us a little closer. One afternoon, as we were heading to our therapy session, Ethan's phone rang. It was his old friend, Mark, again. Ethan answered, his face growing tense as he listened. "What's going on?" I asked after he ended the call. "Lindsay's in deeper trouble," Ethan said, his voice heavy. "She tried to con someone, and they didn't take it well. She's in real danger, Rachel." I felt a pang of anger mixed with pity. "What are we supposed to do about it?" Ethan sighed. "I don't know, but we can't go back to that chaos. She needs to face the consequences." We went through our therapy session, trying to stay focused, but I could see the worry etched on Ethan's face. Dr. Green noticed it too. "Ethan, what's troubling you today?" she asked gently. "Lindsay's in trouble again," he admitted. "I feel guilty for cutting her off, but I also know we can't help her anymore." Dr. Green nodded empathetically. "It's natural to feel conflicted, but remember why you made that decision. You need to protect your own well-being." After the session, we walked in silence, each lost in our thoughts. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Ethan asked suddenly. "I hope so, for her sake," I replied, squeezing his hand. "But we've done all we can." A few days later, we received a call from the local police. Lindsay had been arrested again, this time for fraud. I watched as Ethan took the call, his face a mask of pain and resignation. "Thank you, officer," he said before hanging up. "Lindsay's being held on serious charges." I reached out, holding his hand. "We have to let her face the music, Ethan." "I know," he said, tears welling up, "but it hurts." Time passed, and Lindsay's troubles remained a distant shadow. Ethan and I continued to strengthen our bond, finding joy in the simple things we once took for granted. We decided to attend a couples retreat recommended by Dr. Green. "Welcome, everyone," the retreat facilitator greeted us warmly. "This weekend is about reconnecting, rebuilding trust, and finding joy in your partnership." We participated in exercises designed to foster communication and understanding. One activity involved writing letters to each other, expressing our hopes and fears. "Dear Ethan," I began, pouring my heart onto the paper. "I admire your strength and your willingness to fight for us. We've faced so much, but I believe in our future together." When we exchanged letters, I saw tears in Ethan's eyes. "Rachel, your words mean everything to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your letter is beautiful, Ethan," I replied, my own tears falling. By the end of the retreat, we felt more connected than ever. We stood on a hill overlooking a serene lake, holding hands as the sun set. "This feels like a new beginning," Ethan said softly. "It does," I agreed. "We've come so far." Back home, the weeks turned into months, our relationship growing stronger. We began planning future projects together, talking about travel, hobbies, and even starting a family someday. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Ethan turned to me. "I never thought we'd make it through all of this," he admitted. "But we did," I said, smiling, "and we're stronger for it." We received one final piece of news about Lindsay. She had finally checked herself into a rehabilitation program, facing the reality of her actions. "Maybe this is the turning point she needs," Ethan said hopefully. "Let's hope so," I replied, grateful for the closure. With each day, we moved forward, creating a future built on resilience and love. Together, we had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and ready for whatever lay ahead. As we looked toward the horizon, we knew that the shadows of betrayal had finally faded, leaving only the bright promise of new beginnings.
Everyone looked up to Kelly Cohen because of her tenacity and willpower. She was 34 years old and had spent the majority of her life in the bustling city of San Francisco. Kelly wasn't simply another face in the crowd. She was a self-reliant, diligent individual who had overcome obstacles in life to establish a prosperous career for herself. But there were challenges along the way in her journey. As the only child of Dr. William Cohen and Margaret Cohen, Kelly was raised in a loving household. Both were well-regarded medical professionals who operated a private clinic in the center of the city. Kelly was exposed to discussions about medicine and helping people from an early age, which had a significant impact on her perspective on life. Although Kelly's parents wanted her to follow in their footsteps, she decided against it. She got a position at a prestigious software company after earning her degree in computer technology. She was promoted over the years as a result of her abilities and commitment, and she quickly rose to the position of team lead, overseeing a skilled group of developers and managing challenging projects. Kelly maintained her groundedness in spite of her career success. Her father instilled in her the belief that relationships are more important than accomplishments. Her family was her entire universe as a child, not just a source of support. Kelly had a particularly close relationship with her father, who frequently gave her life lessons on lengthy rides or peaceful evening walks. On the other side, her mother gave her emotional support and always pushed her to reach new heights and follow her aspirations. But when Kelly lost her mother in a terrible vehicle accident in her mid-20s, her life took a devastating turn. Kelly and her father were heartbroken by the unexpected loss. Their once vibrant home felt empty for a long time. However, Kelly leaned on her father for support and found comfort in her profession rather than allowing grief to control her. They overcame the challenging times together, leaning on one another for support. Years later, tragedy struck once more, right as Kelly believed life was settling into a predictable pattern. A terminal cancer diagnosis was made for her father, who had supported her through everything. Kelly was devastated by the news. It hurt to see her father, who had previously been so vibrant, progressively deteriorate. However, Kelly remained loyal to herself and did not allow her feelings to control her. She made sure her father felt loved and cared for by spending as much time as she could with him. Kelly stayed a fighter despite all the highs and lows. She was a strong, compassionate, and determined lady whose traits would soon be put to the test in ways she never could have predicted. During one of the most difficult times in her life, Kelly met Jack Turner. Her mother had passed away unexpectedly not long before, and the loss was too much to take. Kelly was just trying to keep herself together and help her father at the moment, not seeking friendship. However, destiny had other ideas. At a casual meal, Jack introduced himself to Kelly through a mutual friend, and his laid-back demeanor immediately put her at ease. Jack's ability to make others laugh and his cool head stood in sharp contrast to Kelly's mental turmoil. Instead of avoiding her sorrow or attempting to ignore it, he listened to her with patience as she related tales of her mother and the loss she was finding difficult to comprehend. "You don't need to go through this alone, Kelly," was a common statement made by Jack, and eventually it started to seem like a promise. Their bond developed organically. Jack established himself as a constant in her life, providing assistance when she most needed it. He encouraged her to take breaks from work, gave her coffee on hectic mornings, and even assisted her father with errands when Kelly was feeling overburdened. It meant the world to Kelly that he was not only kind to her, but also to her family. Like chapters in a well-written book, their relationship's milestones came and went as their love became stronger. At a peaceful picnic in Golden Gate Park 2 years after they first met, Jack asked Kelly to marry him. Simple, sincere, and passionate, it was the ideal gesture for them, not a big show with fireworks or a throng. Kelly thought she had found someone who would support her no matter what, so she said yes without hesitation. Her father, still grieving the loss of his wife, was overjoyed to see his daughter finding happiness again. However, not everything about their journey was smooth. When Kelly met Jack's mother for the first time, she couldn't ignore the nagging sense of unease. Mina Turner was a striking woman with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. Divorced from Jack's father, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who always got what she wanted. But her words often felt like daggers cloaked in silk. "So this is Kelly," Mina had said during their first meeting, her eyes scanning Kelly from head to toe. "You're a little older than I expected for Jack, aren't you?" but I suppose brains make up for looks in some cases. Kelly was stunned by the comment, but chose to remain polite, determined to make a good impression. Jack quickly stepped in to defend her, mentioning Kelly's career achievements and her family's respected background. While Mina's attitude softened after hearing about Kelly's financial stability, the exchange left Kelly feeling uneasy. It was clear that Mina's approval came with strings attached. Despite this rocky start, Kelly chose to focus on her future with Jack, hoping that any tensions with his mother would ease over time. What she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of a much larger challenge. Kelly and Jack's married life began on a high note. They moved into a beautiful apartment in San Francisco that Kelly's father had gifted them as a wedding present. It was modern, spacious, and filled with possibilities for a happy future. Kelly dreamed of creating a warm, loving home where they could build their life together. In the beginning, everything seemed promising. Jack would occasionally surprise Kelly with small gestures, like bringing flowers or planning a casual date night, which made her believe they were settling into a perfect partnership. However, as the honeymoon phase began to fade, Kelly noticed cracks in their life together. While she juggled a demanding job in tech and household responsibilities, Jack's carefree attitude toward their new life started becoming more apparent. Before their marriage, Jack had always appeared supportive and kind. But after moving in together, Kelly realized he had little experience with basic household responsibilities. Jack didn't know how to cook, operate the washing machine, or even keep their home tidy. "I've never been good at these things," he shrugged when Kelly asked for help. At first, Kelly took on the chores, thinking it was temporary. "He'll adjust to married life," she told herself. But Jack showed no interest in learning or sharing the workload. Instead, he left garbage lying around, ignored chores, and acted as though Kelly's efforts were just part of her role as his wife. Whenever she brought it up, Jack brushed her concerns aside with a casual, "You're better at it than I am, so why not just handle it?" What hurt Kelly the most wasn't just the chores, it was Jack's indifference. He seemed to believe that his job was the only contribution he needed to make to their marriage, while Kelly carried the weight of both work and home. Over time, her exhaustion and frustration grew. Adding to the strain was Jack's mother, Mina. She was a frequent visitor to their home, often arriving unannounced and criticizing Kelly's efforts to create a peaceful space. "This apartment is nice, but you could decorate it better," Mina would comment while inspecting the furniture. Kelly tried to keep the peace, going out of her way to make Mina feel welcome. She sent her thoughtful gifts for birthdays and Mother's Day, hoping to win her approval. But Mina found fault in everything. One year, Kelly gifted her a high-quality scarf, only to hear Mina complain, "This isn't from a luxury brand. Couldn't you have picked something better?" Worse, Mina constantly asked Jack for money, claiming she needed it for emergencies or new expenses. Jack never hesitated to hand over cash, even when it stretched their own finances thin. "It's my mom, I can't say no," he'd tell Kelly whenever she protested. Jack's generosity toward his mother and his lack of financial planning soon began to take a toll. Though Kelly earned a good salary, Jack's spending habits were reckless. He often splurged on unnecessary items, justifying it with, "What's the point of working hard if we can't enjoy ourselves?" To make matters worse, Jack started using their Joy credit card for extravagant purchases without consulting Kelly. New gadgets, expensive dinners, and even gifts for his mother all began to pile up on their account. Kelly's attempts to set a budget or talk about their expenses were met with resistance. "You're overthinking it," Jack would say. "We'll figure it out." As their savings dwindled, Kelly felt the pressure mounting. She had worked hard to build a stable life, and now it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. Between Jack's careless behavior, Mina's constant demands, and her own workload, Kelly began to feel trapped in a marriage that was nothing like the partnership she had envisioned. One evening, Kelly received a phone call that would change her life forever. Her father, Dr. William Cohen, whom she hadn't seen in a few weeks due to her busy schedule, asked to meet her in person. When they sat down together at a quiet cafe, she noticed an unusual heaviness in his demeanor. After a long pause, her father gently broke the news. He had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and treatment was no longer an option. The words hit Kelly like a thunderbolt. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to process what she had just heard. "No, Dad, there must be something we can do," she said, her voice shaking. But her father, always calm and pragmatic, held her hand and said, "Kelly, this is just how life works sometimes. Let's not focus on what we can't change. Let's make the most of the time we have left." Despite his attempt to comfort her, Kelly couldn't contain her grief. Losing her mother years earlier had been devastating, and the thought of losing her father too felt unbearable. But she knew she had to stay strong for him. From that moment on, Kelly's life became a delicate balancing act. She started visiting her father almost every day, spending time at his bedside in the hospital, and managing his care as the illness progressed. She took on more responsibilities, handling his medical appointments, managing his bills, and ensuring he was as comfortable as possible. At the same time, Kelly was already overwhelmed with work and the endless household responsibilities she had been carrying on her own. Sleep became a luxury as she juggled everything, often staying up late into the night to complete tasks she didn't have time for during the day. Despite her exhaustion, Kelly never complained. "Dad was there for me through everything," she told herself. "The least I can do is be there for him now." Her father, even in his declining health, noticed the toll it was taking on her. One day, during one of her hospital visits, he asked her, "Kelly, how is everything at home? How's your marriage with Jack?" Kelly hesitated. She didn't want to burden her father with her marital troubles, but her silence spoke volumes. Her father gave her hand a reassuring squeeze and said, "You don't have to endure anything that makes you unhappy. You deserve better, Kelly. Don't ever forget that." Those words stayed with her, becoming a source of quiet strength during the storm. Amid all this, Jack's reaction to her father's illness was starkly indifferent. When Kelly told him about the diagnosis, his response was a half-hearted, "That's tough. I hope you're holding up okay." There were no offers of help, no comforting words, and no genuine concern. Instead, Jack continued with his routine as if nothing had changed. Kelly pleaded with him to at least visit her father in the hospital, but Jack showed up only once. Even then, he spent most of the time scrolling through his phone. "I've got a lot on my plate too, Kelly," he'd say whenever she asked for his support. His mother, Mina, was no better. Instead of offering condolences or help, she made insensitive remarks like, "Well, at least he's had a good run." The lack of empathy from Jack and his mother cut Kelly deeply. She felt isolated, as though the weight of the world was on her shoulders with no one to share it with. The man she had once believed would be her rock in times of need was proving to be anything but. Through it all, Kelly kept going, fueled by her love for her father and a quiet determination to honor his strength and legacy. Even as her own world began to crumble, she vowed to make his remaining days as peaceful as possible. The inevitable moment came one quiet afternoon. Kelly had been sitting by her father's bedside at the hospital, holding his hand when his breathing slowed and finally stopped. For a few seconds, the world seemed to stand still. Kelly stared at him, unable to comprehend that the man who had been her rock, her guide, and her biggest supporter was gone. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of the loss hit her. Yet, amidst the overwhelming sorrow, she found a small comfort in knowing that she had been there for him until the very end. Dr. William Cohen had faced his illness with dignity and courage, and Kelly vowed to honor his memory by living a life he would be proud of. The days that followed were a whirlwind of funeral arrangements and condolences. Friends, family, and former patients of her father gathered to pay their respects, sharing stories about the incredible impact he had on their lives. It was a heartfelt farewell to a man who had touched so many. However, in the midst of the grief, Kelly felt an undeniable loneliness. Jack and Mina attended the funeral, but their presence was detached and superficial. Jack didn't lift a finger to help with the arrangements, and Mina seemed more concerned with appearances than offering genuine support. A week after the funeral, Kelly received a call from her father's lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, requesting a meeting to discuss her father's estate. Still emotionally drained, Kelly attended the meeting, expecting to handle a few formalities. What she didn't anticipate was the sheer scale of what her father had left behind. Mr. Jenkins explained that her father had been not only a successful doctor, but also a savvy investor in real estate. After settling all taxes and liabilities, the remaining estate was worth over $3 million. In addition to this financial legacy, her father had left her ownership of the private healthcare business he had built and cherished. As his only child, Kelly was the sole beneficiary of the inheritance. Kelly sat in stunned silence as the lawyer detailed the assets and investments her father had meticulously managed. She had always known him to be a man of principles and hard work, but she hadn't realized just how much he had accomplished. Along with the wealth came a heartfelt letter her father had written to her, urging her to use the inheritance wisely and to follow her own happiness. Kelly, the letter read, "This is my gift to you, a way to ensure that you never have to compromise on your dreams. You have always made me proud, and I know you'll make the right choices. Remember, your happiness matters most." As Kelly left the lawyer's office, a mix of emotions washed over her. She felt gratitude for her father's foresight and love, but also the heavy responsibility of honoring his wishes. She knew the inheritance would change her life, but she couldn't have predicted just how much turmoil it would soon bring. It didn't take long for Jack and Mina's true colors to surface. After Kelly inherited her father's estate, just days after learning about the $3 million inheritance, Jack began rifling through the legal documents Kelly had brought home from the lawyer's office without her permission. When Kelly confronted him, Jack dismissed her concerns with a condescending tone. "Kelly, don't be so greedy," he said with a smirk. "This money isn't just yours. It's for us now, and Mom deserves a share too. After all, she's family." Mina chimed in with a self-satisfied laugh, her voice dripping with entitlement. Finally, Jack, "Now we can live the life we've always deserved." That old man did something right for a change. Kelly's heart sank hearing her late father referred to so disrespectfully. It felt like a slap in the face. The people who were supposed to support her during this difficult time were now treating her father's legacy as nothing more than a lottery ticket. Feeling cornered, Kelly struggled to find a way to handle the situation. Jack and Mina's demands became relentless. They pushed Kelly to transfer the inheritance into a joint account, insisting that they would manage the money together. Whenever she hesitated, Jack guilt-tripped her. "Don't you trust me, Kelly? What kind of marriage is this if we can't share everything?" Mina, on the other hand, wasn't shy about playing the victim. "After all I've done for this family, is it so wrong for me to expect a little comfort in my old age?" Overwhelmed and emotionally exhausted, Kelly felt she had no choice but to give in. She transferred a portion of her savings into their joint account to keep the peace. Despite her growing unease, she forced a smile and said, "Sure, use it as you see fit." all the while feeling trapped in her own home. The moment Jack and Mina gained access to the funds, their behavior shifted drastically. They began treating Kelly's inheritance as a never-ending supply of wealth. Jack quit his job, claiming, "Why bother working when we're sitting on millions?" Mina practically moved into their home, turning it into her personal base for endless shopping sprees and extravagant outings. The duo spent recklessly on luxury brand items, fine dining, and vacations. Mina often returned home with bags from high-end stores, bragging about her latest purchases. "The scarves Kelly used to give me were a joke compared to this," she exclaimed one evening, showing off a designer handbag she had bought with Kelly's money. Jack and Mina's spending spree wasn't limited to the inheritance. They also began withdrawing large sums from Kelly's hard-earned savings, including $100,000 from their joint account. Kelly watched in disbelief as the balance dwindled, powerless to stop them. When she confronted Jack about their reckless spending, he shrugged and laughed. "What's the big deal? The inheritance will cover it. Just relax and let us enjoy life for once." Kelly's frustration and anger grew, but Jack and Mina dismissed her concerns as if they were trivial. It was clear they had no intention of stopping, and Kelly began to realize that if she didn't take a stand soon, her father's legacy and her own financial stability would be completely destroyed. Kelly had reached her breaking point. Watching Jack and Mina recklessly spend her father's legacy, insult her late father, and deplete her hard-earned savings was more than she could tolerate. Quietly, she began to plan her next move. One morning, after Jack and Mina left for a lavish shopping spree, Kelly made her decision. She contacted a locksmith and had the locks on their apartment changed. She also opened a new account, transferring the remaining $50,000 from their joint account to her personal account to prevent further misuse. Then she packed Jack and Mina's belongings into boxes and placed them near the front door. By the time they returned home, Kelly was ready. When they tried to enter the apartment, the keys no longer worked. Jack pounded on the door while Mina yelled, "Kelly, open up." "What is the meaning of this?" Calmly, Kelly spoke through the intercom. "I've changed the locks. We'll talk, but not here. Meet me at the cafe around the corner." At the cafe, Jack and Mina arrived furious, their voices rising as they demanded an explanation. Kelly sat across from them, her demeanor calm but resolute. She placed a piece of paper on the table. It was a divorce petition. "I'm done, Jack," she said firmly. "This marriage is over. I've had enough of your grief, your disrespect, and your complete lack of support." Jack's face twisted in disbelief. "Divorce? You can't be serious. What about the money? What about everything we've built together?" Mina chimed in, her tone incredulous. "After everything we've done for you, Kelly, this is how you repay us." Kelly didn't flinch. "What you've done for me? All you've done is treat me like an ATM and insult my father's memory. This ends now. You're not getting another cent from me." Hearing this, Jack tried to regain control. His voice rising, he said, "You think you can walk away and keep everything? The inheritance belongs to both of us. It's marital property, and I'll get my share in the divorce." Kelly leaned back, her confidence unwavering. "Actually, you're wrong, Jack. Inheritance isn't considered marital property. It's legally mine, and you're not entitled to any of it." Jack's smug expression quickly faded. "That can't be true. Mom, check this. She's lying." Mina fumbled with her phone, frantically searching for legal information. Her face went pale as she read the confirmation. Property inherited by one spouse is considered separate property, Kelly added, quoting the law. "So no, you're not getting a penny from my father's estate." Jack's disbelief turned to desperation. Kelly, please don't do this. I don't have a job. I have no savings. How am I supposed to live? Kelly looked at him, her voice steady but firm. That's not my problem, Jack. You brought this on yourself. Take responsibility for your actions. For the first time, Jack and Mina seemed truly powerless. They sat in stunned silence as Kelly stood up, sliding the divorce papers across the table. Sign the papers and stay out of my life, she said before walking away, leaving them to face the reality of their grief-fueled downfall. Following Kelly's resolute decision, Jack and Mina's world fell apart. They soon found themselves in financial ruin since they were unable to access Kelly's funds or inheritance. Jack was left without money after quitting his job amid their careless spending binge. In the meantime, they accrued unmanageable debt from their extravagant joint credit card expenditures. When their creditors arrived, Jack and Mina found it difficult to make even the smallest payments. They were forced to move into a tiny, dilapidated apartment on the outskirts of the city after being forced to downsize significantly. Mina, who was once fixated on projecting an image of high society, was now employed as a cashier at a nearby grocery. Jack took up a number of odd jobs in an attempt to make ends meet. But his entitled attitude and lack of abilities made it difficult for him to hold any of them. Their opulent way of life had faded into the past as the harsh reality of debt and toil took its place. The consequences didn't end there. When his avarice and abuse of Kelly were exposed, Jack's standing in his social circle was ruined. He became even more shunned once Kelly subtly revealed his infidelity throughout the divorce procedures. Mina's socialite acquaintances rejected her because they thought she was a liability, despite the fact that she had thrived on status and influence. Things started to get better for Kelly. Now that she had the bequest safely in her possession, she decided to pay tribute to her father by turning his private healthcare company into a nonprofit organization. Her father would have loved the organization's mission of giving underprivileged people access to free and reasonably priced medical treatment. In addition, Kelly sold the apartment she and Jack had shared and moved to her father's former country home for comfort. She adopted a calmer, more subdued way of life there. Without Jack and Mina's poisonous influence, the beautiful surroundings allowed her the mental room she needed to recover and start over. Both personally and professionally, Kelly flourished. She met new acquaintances, reunited with old ones, and even found time to take up long-neglected hobbies. She developed a passion for her work with the foundation and found great satisfaction in knowing that she was improving the lives of others. When Kelly looked back on her journey, she saw how far she had come. "Your happiness matters most," her father's final words became her motto. She made a commitment to always put her own health first and to never allow someone to take advantage of her again. Kelly's tenacity and resolve demonstrated that even in the face of treachery, it is possible to take back your life and come out stronger than before. While Jack and Mina's demise served as a sobering warning of what greed and entitlement may lead to, Kelly had a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in years as a result of her newfound independence and purposeful destiny. She was at last able to live the life she had earned, one that was full of strength, thankfulness, and the unfailing remembrance of her father's love.